My entitled ex-boyfriend lies about me to everybody that we know. From family to clients, he literally goes out of his way to say that I lied about cheating and that I am emotionally manipulating him. So I decided to get some revenge by treating him exactly the same way, by revealing all of his dirty secrets and ruining his reputation, causing his career to go right down the drain. Here's how I did it. Okay, to start things out, my now ex-boyfriend and I had been dating for a few years. We built everything together, we moved in, started a small business, even talked about marriage. But one day, he finds a hoodie in our apartment that wasn't his, and he just immediately says, "Oh, who have you been bringing around here?" Well, it was his friend's hoodie. His friend literally left it over a few nights ago when they came around. I told him that, and I showed him proofs, and even got his friend to confirm it, but apparently it just didn't matter. He kept digging and grilling me, accusing me of clearing evidence. Then he said the one thing that flipped a switch in me. "I don't believe you, but I'm willing to move past it if you apologize and admit it was disrespectful." Now, here's the thing. You do not accuse me and then dangle forgiveness like a prize. So I packed a bag that night and I left. And after I did that, he didn't reach out for days. But you might be wondering, what did he do instead? Well, he started bad-mouthing me to mutual friends and clients, claiming that I emotionally manipulated him, lied about cheating, and ghosted him. So I played his game too. I decided to play the role. If I'm the cheater that he told the world that I was, then I was just gonna stop protecting his image. I then sent screenshots of his shady text messages with other women from months ago. I also let people know that I was the one who funded half of his business. When clients asked why I left, I told them the truth word for word with receipts. And by the end of the month, his reputation tanked. He begged me to take the post down, said I was hurting his career, but I just smiled and said, "Well, this is what you wanted, right? You treated me like the villain and I'm just following your script." And you know what? Now I'm thriving. I rebranded the business under my name, and I don't flinch whenever I see his name anymore. He made me the villain, so I gave him a really good story to reflect on. Oh man, I love this story so much because seriously, this guy's a complete douchebag. The fact that he tried to be like, "Oh, you need to admit that you were wrong and apologize," you know, even though you didn't do anything wrong. The hoodie belonged to his friend. Like, what's wrong with this guy? And the fact that he's trying to be like, "You need to apologize before I can even move on from this." It's like, dude, what are you talking about? There's nothing to apologize for. The original poster literally did nothing wrong and you're trying to be like, "You need to apologize." So I love the fact that you tanked his reputation, and I love the fact that you didn't try to protect him anymore. Like, if this guy wants to tell lies about you, then congratulations. All the truth about him is gonna come out. So good for you for doing that, because it sounds like this guy absolutely deserves it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled Karen demands that we move out of the way, despite the fact that we're at a public area that anyone could go to, as she chose to act like a jerk instead of a reasonable human being. Here's what happened. Okay, so near where I live, there's a steep mountain to drive up and down as part of the trip to the coast. It's narrow and a single lane for most of it, but it's a very popular drive. On one wide corner, there's a bit of a tiny cave in a rock, and people have named this Pooh's Corner, and have put a teddy bear of Pooh in the cave. And because there's a very small amount of extra space here to pull off, it's become a spot for families with kids to sometimes stop and let the kids look at the teddy bear and add their own bears, etc. But generally, there's only room for 1 to 2 vehicles at a time, so it is sporadically used. We were there with our kids having a look on our way down to the coast, and we were also looking for a geocache in the area. Well, a lady parked on the uphill side with her 4-wheel drive and horse flat filling the only 2 parking spots, came over and just straight up said to us, "I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." Now, it's really important to note that this is a public area, and she didn't appear to have any official authority of any sort, so her approach got me seriously offended almost immediately. Now, not believing the entitlement, I was like, "I beg your pardon?" And she just repeated herself again, "I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." I then replied by saying, "I'm sorry, but we won't be doing that. My kids and I are looking for something." She looked defeated and apologized, and only then decided to explain herself, telling us she is traveling in a convoy and had been told over the radio that the friends still coming up the mountain behind her are having problems with their engine overheating, and they will need a spot to pull up. Now, our spot was on the downhill side, so I'm not sure how this was gonna help. I mean, she would have been better off just moving her own vehicle. But it's funny how much more helpful I would have been if she had politely asked me if we could move and just told us why from the start, instead of basically ordering us like some cop using their move-along powers, because being kind truly would have done the trick. Yeah, that's a really weird attitude in my opinion. I understand you might have like family that's like freaking out and they're probably having problems, but that's no reason to be rude, dude. Just like explain yourself. If you give me some context and a reason to move, then guess what? I'll move out of the way. But if you're gonna be a condescending jerk, then don't expect anything from me. In fact, don't even talk to me, dude. Like, just stay away from me. So yeah, this lady's attitude was incredible. incredibly condescending, and I don't blame you for being hesitant in the slightest. Am I the jerk for telling off my future sister-in-law when she didn't want to invite my younger brother to her wedding? Because despite the fact that my younger brother has quite literally done nothing wrong, he is still treated like the black sheep of the family, all because he didn't play football in high school, causing me to stand up for him because this treatment is truly unacceptable. Here's what's going on. I'm a 23-year-old female, and I have a 26-year-old older brother who we will call Drew, who is getting married at the end of this summer. To say it lightly, me and his fiance, who we will call Lacey, do not get along in the slightest. She is very stuck up and has made some snide comments to me and my younger brother, who we will call Max. For context, Max is 16 years old and has always been the black sheep of the family. He is very academically and artistically talented, but my father and mother are disappointed in his lack of sports. And yeah, it's cliche, I know. Not to mention that they've favored my sister, his twin, who we will call Caroline. Max and Lacey were civil for a while, but I guess I haven't seen them speak for a long time for reasons unknown to me. The problem occurred last night when I was asking Lacey about the wedding and how the planning was going. She started telling me her seating chart and showing me what she had planned. And as I was looking at the chart, Max's name was nowhere to be found. I don't love Lacey, but I'm not going to assume the worst of her. So I asked her where Max's name was, and she suddenly got quiet. She said to me, "He's not going to be there." I then said to her, "You mean not in the wedding party, right?" But she says to me in a calm fashion, "No, he's not invited." And she said it in a way as if she was talking about the weather. I kept asking her why she wouldn't invite him, but invited Caroline instead. But she just said that she feels Caroline is more mature because she's a girl. Now, this wedding isn't going to be child-free. Lacey has stated this multiple times. I have many little cousins who are also being invited, since family is very important to us. So not inviting Max makes no sense. He is a very nice kid and very mature for his age. Much more mature than Caroline is. He never causes problems, but like I mentioned earlier, there are some big issues with him not following Drew's and my dad's footsteps in football. I know Lacey is very desperate for my family's approval, so maybe outlining Max is the way to do it for her, but I have a feeling that there's something more to it. After what Lacey said about not inviting Max, I stood up and started yelling at her for not including Max. She then kind of just ignored what I was saying, but when I escalated, Drew came over. As he was walking over, she started to cry and make a bigger scene about it. Drew then knelt down to comfort her and gave me dirty looks in the process. Once she was inside, he turned to me and started yelling at me about being rude to her when she is under so much stress from planning the wedding and trying to get my family to like her. I understand that my family is close-knit and kind of not welcoming to newcomers, but that doesn't excuse her behavior, and that's exactly what I told my brother. I then asked him why he didn't want to invite Max, and he just told me to stay out of it, which is a classic move for him. He called me a jerk for treating Lacey like that, and then just walked out. And you know what? We haven't spoken since last night. I understand that yelling at her was a bit much, and I could have handled the situation differently, but I am sick of seeing Max being left out and treated badly. I don't want to fight with Drew, but I'm standing my ground for Max's sake. Max also doesn't know about any of this yet, and I'm hesitant to tell him. My parents have stayed out of it so far, but Drew is still set on being mad at me. So truly, am I the jerk right now? Because I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, literally, this is so stupid. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Because from the sounds of it, like, Max doesn't sound like a bad kid. He does well in school and he likes art. Like, seriously, what's the problem here? Are these people really that bent out of shape where they can't see the good in their kid and treat him with some semblance of respect? Like, do people actually act like this? Like, this is so bizarre to me. Like, first and foremost, the only reason Max is the black sheep of the family is because the family has rejected him. Not because of anything he's done, but because he literally isn't doing what they've done in the past. And that is so stupid in my opinion. Like, why not let your kid be themselves and do whatever they want to do? So it really almost seems like they're doing this almost out of obligation instead of Max doing something that actually warrants this kind of behavior. If Max was destructive or violent or rude or something like that, then sure, I could understand why he would not be invited. Like, it would make sense at that point. But from the sounds of it, it's like, okay, they're just excluding him because they're terrible people. And in my opinion, Drew, as well as anybody else who agrees with this decision, absolutely needs to be called out publicly for the way they're treating your younger brother. He literally hasn't done anything wrong. These people are out of their minds for mistreating him, and it honestly just doesn't compute with me. Like, seriously, I don't understand this. So I know for a fact if I was in their shoes, I would absolutely scream this from the rooftops and I would not show up to that wedding. I would say, hey, look, these people are excluding my little brother for no reason, all because he didn't play football supposedly, which is quite possibly one of the dumbest reasons to cut someone out of the family, because this behavior deserves to be ridiculed and mocked and absolutely called out, because otherwise this kind of crap will happen over and over again. An entitled mother blames me for almost hitting their dog, despite the fact that they were standing in the middle of the path that I was trying to cycle down. And I'm honestly still super pissed off about this situation that I just don't know what to do. Here's how it went down. I'm a 20-year-old female and I was cycling through my local park on my bike. Nothing unusual was going on when I happened to go past the children children's play area. The path around said play area was barely wide enough for a pram, so I was going pretty slow. I came around the corner and the entitled mother of the story is stood in the path, with her pram blocking the path itself. So I start to ring the bell on my bike, but there's still no movement from this lady. This happens 5 more times and still no movement of any kind. So when I go to cycle around them, their dog runs across the path and I have to swerve to avoid hitting the dog, which is nothing I haven't dealt with before. So I stop, I get off the bike, and I walk over. I say to her, "Hey, can you please keep your dog under control? I would not have almost run over it if you had just moved." The entitled mother said, No, my child is injured, so it's not my fault. You're the one that almost hit my dog." I then said to her, "Your child is in a pram. They look like they aren't even hurt. And I gave you plenty of warning that I was there." She then said to me, "Yeah, well, I just wasn't going to move because my child is injured." At this point, an older man comes over who looks like he's maybe in his 60s and starts telling me off for talking to this entitled mother like that. So I tell him that guess what? It's a public park. I'm allowed to cycle with due care. Bear in mind this is the United Kingdom and there's signs where you can and can't ride. There's no sign saying no cycling because people cycle along it all the time. He then goes on to say, "Well, it's a public footpath. You aren't allowed to cycle here." But I responded by saying, again, it's a public park. And yes, I'm allowed to cycle with due care. It's not my fault she can't control her dog. The old man then says to me, "It's a public footpath. You shouldn't be cycling on it." But I just say again, there's no sign saying I can't cycle on this path. It's a public park. And if she had just moved, I wouldn't have almost hit her dog. The entitled mother then tells me, "Just go away. I'm not arguing in front of my kids." At this point, I was pretty worked up because I had almost hit a dog and they weren't listening to what I was saying. So I ended up telling the entitled mother to move next time. And I tell the old man to not get involved next time, all before cycling off. I then end up sitting down on the bench and just take a wild guess as to what I see over at the play area when I look that way. That's right, I see the entitled mother with her kid running around. I'm honestly baffled and I don't know if I did something wrong here because this entire situation was so ridiculous. Oh man, she's literally that kind of person. She will not get out of anybody's way, and if anything happens to her because of her own negligence, she's now going to be like, "Oh, this is your fault. You almost hit me and my kid. This is your fault." When in reality, if she literally just moved off the footpath, you know, the path that people use for their bicycles, this would not have happened. Like, what's going on right now? This is so stupid. So personally, I think he did the right thing by telling this Karen off because she literally was just being an obstruction for anybody who's trying to ride their bike. Because in my opinion, there's absolutely no defending this kind of behavior. An entitled Karen says that I'm not nearly disabled enough to be parking in a disabled parking spot, saying that if I didn't move my car, she was going to have it towed when I walked away, leaving me in one of the weirdest situations I've ever been in my life. Here's what happened. I want to start off by saying that I'm a self-employed contractor. I go where I'm needed for however many days I'm needed for. Sometimes it's for 2 days and sometimes it's a few hours. I park in customer or visitor parking or wherever else is open to any given person, unless the work order specifically says otherwise. I'm also qualified for a disabled parking pass due to issues I have with my knees and my legs. I use it when I need it, and if I'm waffling, I'll take it only if there are others free. Better safe than sorry when it comes to my pain level and tolerances. So I'm on a multi-day, 1-day-a-week gig for a company downtown in my city where parking is problematic. Between the businesses and the apartment complex literally right next door, many have to walk for a chunk of time to get into the building or pay handsomely for parking. Thankfully, there's a disabled parking space right out front that is typically free. And today I am hurting. It feels like crystals are growing in my joints, and lifting my feet even at curb height is basically my entire available energy stores. And they had a ramp or else I definitely would have left right then and there, and that is definitely not a joke. So I get out and there's someone in the smoking area right off my car. And sure, I don't like smelling smoke at the end of my day, but it is what it is. And this is also where we meet the star of our story, the entitled Karen in question. And yes, I use that name, but it is well deserved. Trust me, you'll find out later on. She says something to me right as I exit my car, but I can't really hear her because of the road traffic. So I walk around the side so we can talk more clearly. Now, if you're not paying attention, it may have looked like I walked around the side like a typical person would, but in reality, I'm leaning hard on my car because I'm hurting and my medicine hasn't really kicked in yet. This Karen then says, "You can't park there. There are people in wheelchairs who need it more." Now, it's really important to note that no one was around, so she was obviously meaning some mystery person in the future would need it. Now, as a quick side note, why is it that when an ableist person wants to be entitled, it's always a wheelchair user, not a walker, a cane, or arm crutches? And to be completely honest, it's beginning to be a sign of what's to come. But I was, however, finally able to use a line I'd had loaded for way too long. This is give or take, but you'll get the idea. I said to her, "Since when did you become my doctor and determine I don't need accessible parking anymore?" This entitled Karen then looked at me and said, "You park here all day long, and other people need to get into the bank." But it's like additional disabled parking is available available directly around the corner, and it's on the main entrance to the bank, so I don't know what she's talking about. I then look at this Karen and I say, "Ma'am, why do you care? I'm allowed to park here." But she says to me, "No, you're not. Other people need it way more than you do, and they can't park here if you are." And again, no one's around. The bank was even closed. Like, what is she talking about? I say to her, "Ma'am, I'm allowed to park here. I'm not here all day, and even if I was, there's no time limit on this spot." But Karen isn't letting this go. So I pull out my phone to record for my own safety. She then stops talking, long enough for the security guard parked literally next to me to say she is allowed to park here. And I didn't hear it, but I would confirm it later. But despite the camera still rolling, this Karen simply couldn't help herself. She said, "You can't park here. You've been here every day for the last 2 weeks, and other people need it more than you." I said to her, "Well, despite the fact that I look normal, I need this space. You are not my doctor, and he would not risk his license lying on an official form just so I can have more convenient parking." The Karen then said to me, "You've been here all day, every day for 2 weeks. You should not be parking here." But I said to her, "I wasn't here yesterday, nor the day before, nor the day before that, or the one before that one." She tried to say yes, but I just responded back by saying, "No, I wasn't. I was at a different address. Would you like to see my GPS logs? I keep them for tax reasons." The Karen, glossing over the fact that I can prove her wrong, she said to me, "You work in that building. You can't park here if you work in that building. You'll be here all day and other people need it more." But I responded back again saying there is no time limit on this space. I then move my camera to the parking sign and I say to her, "And I have a permit. I'm allowed to park here. And I don't work in that building. I work here," which I then tap my magnetic business logo attached to my open car door and right in front of the Karen. Well, this interaction went in circles 3 more times as she literally repeated herself over and over again. But this entitled Karen then said the following, "Well, we'll just see when your car gets towed. If you want to risk it, that's up to you." I then zoom in on her face on my phone, not knowing if I'm capturing anything because the early morning sun with its famous glare is everywhere. I figured just in case she slashes my tire or something like that, I have her face on my phone. Well, that shut her up enough to get my stuff and walk to the front door with an obvious limp and limb lifting restrictions. This Karen tries to say something right when I get to the door, the last desperate move she can make, despite being proven wrong, and just still can't let it go. But instead of listening to her, I say, "Ma'am, I'm done talking to you about this. You're not my doctor, you're not my family, nor anyone that I care about. I'm not proving myself to a stranger, proving myself disabled enough for your liking." Then I all but literally dropped the mic and I walked away. Well, not too long later, I go down under the guise of forgetting something from my car, and it turns out I really did forget something, so it was all good. But also because I felt like Karen was gonna pull something off, and I just got a bad vibe. The security guard and his partner were still out front, and the Karen was thankfully gone. I then asked him if anyone had an issue with me parking there, making sure I wasn't in the apartment complex's assigned spaces or something like that just to be safe. He said he told the Karen I was allowed to park there, and she said she was still gonna have me towed. He then said he told her to call the cops, but that I was legally allowed there, and they wouldn't do squat. And also, the guard's partner totally has similar issues with her joints, so she 100% knew where I was coming from, especially with feeling the crunchy crystals growing in your extremities. She told her partner that they should keep an eye on my car to be safe, and that I don't need to worry about the Karen. The Karen was the neighborhood gossip and was always telling or upping everybody else's business. And in fact, she didn't even have her own car. A while later, I go back to my car for parts, and I see her talking to people by the bank, right in the loading zones with blue curbs, aka disability parking. She's telling them that I won't move, so they have to stay back here. But everyone she talked to literally said, "Oh, it's okay, I don't mind, I'm good here," or some version of that. Right before I packed up for the day, I went to the window and I saw this Karen back in the smoking area. And of course, she was eyeballing and glaring at my car. So I grabbed my keys and I honked them to make sure that she didn't screw with me, just in case I had forgotten or it might have been unlocked somehow. Well, she jumped slightly, looked around as if trying to find me, but doesn't see me. The windows are reflective from the outside, so she couldn't find me even if she did think to look up at my story. I honked it again for good measure, laughing all the way back to my tools and finishing packing up. But I think the part that really stands out the most is the fact that she didn't ask me to move. She told me that I couldn't park there, so that some mystery person could park there if they wanted to, if they ever did show up. But seriously, ableists are some of the most entitled people I've ever dealt with, and this Karen absolutely takes the cake. Yeah, this is some crazy stuff. I am so sorry the original poster had to deal with that. The fact that they're trying to be like, "Oh, you don't deserve to park there. Other people need it more." It's like, dude, I don't have to prove the fact that I'm disabled. It's none of your business, so why don't you mind your own business? Even going as far as being like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna tow your car when you leave. Just watch." Like, dude, what are you talking about? I've got the placard in my window. You literally have permission to do this. You have a medical condition that requires you to use it. Like, why can't this lady just mind her own business and leave you alone? The original poster hasn't done anything wrong. They are literally just trying to live their life and go to work work. And here they have this stupid Karen up in their business saying, you're not disabled enough. Like, that's super obnoxious in my opinion, and I'm so sorry you had to deal with that, because that is absolutely uncalled for.
An entitled mother and her 3 full-grown sons come up to my family at the beach and try to force us out of our spot so that they could take our spots. She screamed and threatened us. So in response, my aunt and I devised a very elaborate system of booby traps so that when they did take our spot, we would take our revenge with those booby traps. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Recently, I came back home for a visit, and around the table, the subject came to previous holidays, which made me remember this little story of horror. So I thought you guys might like it. Warning, I was, am, and will always be a jerk, and fully understand that me and my aunt did terrible, borderline sociopathic things here, but my shame over the years has degraded. The dialogue in this story has been translated from Russian, so keep that in mind. So this happened a very, very long time ago, around the time that I was about 9 or 10 years old enough to develop a spiteful mindset. At the time, me and my family, which included me, my mother, my grandmother, and my mother's sister, my aunt, and this was during the time when we lived in another country and usually went to holiday in Ukraine around the Black Sea, which is where this story took place. Every morning around 8 a.m., we would head towards the beaches as they were always full and impossibly hot by the time it was midday. So our plan was always go to the beach and leave by around 11 a.m. when it got so hot that you could cook in your own sweat. We would go around the small town surrounding the beach to play games, arcades, and other entertainment, and then go back to our little special personal houses and huts for rest and lunch. Nevertheless, I digress. So on this particular day, we made it to the beach a little earlier, which meant that we could pick out some of the best parts of the beach and set up our blankets before new amounts of glass and trash made it on the beach. For some background, while the Black Sea is lovely, the beaches around the area are only for more experienced who know how to avoid the trash areas. Often beaches were full of broken glass bottles, cigarettes, needles, and many other dangerous things, and thus it was highly advised that you wear feet protection while traveling between point A and B. So me and the gal crew, my grandfather rarely ever comes to the holidays with us, and my grandparents owned a massive house with farm animals and couldn't trust anyone to take care of them, so someone had to stay back, and my dad is a deadbeat jerk, so it was always just us girls. Now about that spot, we found the perfect spot and laid out our things and towels and checked for any bottles or debris, and we were happy to find none. We watched the beach fill up with people, and eventually around 10-ish, we noticed that a very large woman with 3 kids approached us. Now the girls in my family are big, but this was a hippo of unbelievable proportions. We were in a spot right between the sea and the entrance and under a big umbrella that was there for public use. She towered over us. There were lots of people around, but still a few spaces available around to sit nearby, which was very surprising. This woman towered over us and loudly groaned and complained. Let's refer to her as Entitled Mother and her kids as Entitled Kid 1 and Entitled Kid 2, all 3 boys. Entitled Mother says,
"You're in our spot!"
She yelled loudly. All of us blinked unanimously in confusion. My mom even started laughing a little and asked, "Are you having a heat stroke? Or are you for real?" Entitled Mother gasped loudly and started kicking our towels and stuff.
"You're in our spot! We have been sitting here for the last 3 days and now your fat butts are taking my spot! And because of you, my kids are burning their feet, waiting for you cows to move!"
She yelled. My mother and sister burst into laughter, replying, "Well, whoever the cow in this scenario is, it's definitely not us." This is an odd translation, but that's basically what it means. While this was happening, I was building a small sand pile. Her devil spawn suddenly started pushing me and taking some of my sandcastle stuff and bending it, to which I got up, pushed him away, and grabbed my shovel and swung it, telling him to bugger off. I was swinging it repeatedly and hard. I was usually a well-behaved kid, but I have never seen anyone try to break my stuff, and I would do this as we weren't the richest and I was protective over my things. My mother gasped and started crying out for me to move, which everyone in the surrounding area glanced at, but it's Ukraine. No one cares. I love my people, and besides, there was no one to call for help. Police or guards around the beach are not a common thing or very much wanted. My mother has stood up fully to her now and told her, "Take your fat..." We have a better word, Ethiopia, which means fat, hippo, and butt in one word. "An ugly butt somewhere else before the 5 of us collectively cripple
trample you.
She straight up tries to slap my mother, to which I then responded by taking a plastic shovel to her son with sand in it and started jabbing. As his sibling tried to push me away, I spit in one's face and kicked the other. They all started crying and a few people shouted out for her to shut her brats up. The mother then stops midway and grabs her spawns and yells at us,
"The second you bees move, I'm taking a spot."
There were quite a few more profanities, but I don't remember every word fully or the conversation fully. Now, mind you, there was no one to call for help as the lifeguards were not even spaced out evenly and miles away, so we decided to have a miniature revenge. My mother tries to tell me off for doing what I did to the boys, but my grandmother defends me and says something along the lines of, "Don't be mad at her. She was defending you." To which we all then agreed to forget and have fun. Now, me and my mother's sisters were a lot closer to being siblings than her and my mother. She was about 10 years older than me, so she was like 19 when I was 9. We were swimming in turns, never leaving our stuff unattended. After about 40 minutes, my mother and grandmother tell us to pack our things up as they were going to get one last dip as we had ours. So me and my mother's sister realized we have a window of opportunity, the revenge. While taking their last dip, me and my mother's sister see that the entitled mother is eyeing our spot, and we had an idea. My mother's sister is just as petty-minded and jerk-minded as me. My mother's sister told me to have a quick look around for broken bottles in the area, and I knew exactly what she was planning. She told me not to touch them by hand and use my shovel and my little claw to pick them up. I took my bucket and my spatula and started running around for about 15 minutes while she packed everything, and I started picking up glass shards and bottle shards with my spatula and all the cigarette buds that I could find, all discussing the thing I could find, which was not hard. I piled them into the bucket. I then ran back to my aunt and she saw the bucket full. She told me to be careful and make sure that no one was watching or cared enough to. This wasn't the first scheme, revenge plot, or act of disturbing punishment we have done, so I knew what to do. We knew that my mom and grandmother would still take a long time. Turning our backs to the entitled mother, my mother's sister started to take out the glass shards and bottles, and me and her started spreading them around that specific area, as this was not uncommon for people to bury their trash so that no one paid mind to it. We started burying them so they weren't visible, the sharp way up, and engulfed the whole area as much as we could while making it look like we were building a sandcastle. My aunt told me to come pick up my grandmother and my mom as we saw them getting out of the sea and drying off. She told me to take them around a slightly different route so that they wouldn't step on our little booby trap. I watched her get up and the entitled mother almost pushed her out of the way and yelled at her to move, to which she just smiled and told her to have a lovely day as the 5 of us cross-met. We slowly started to head a little bit away and my aunt stops midway, where there are less people, to put on a few things and stall for time so that we could watch. I saw the entitled mother soccer kick punting the sand tower without checking it. Big mistake. And then she flops down only to yell and howl in pain as she had also sat directly onto the broken glass shards that we hid, cutting up the towel on her leg and thigh entirely. One of the brats, who also tried to break my things, stepped onto the shards and cut his foot, by the looks and sounds of it, and started yelling and crying and breaking down, and the woman yelled in pain. A few people started being convinced by her and started checking what happened and tried to help the woman as she screamed profanities. She started rolling around and all the cigarette buds and seaweed that we had also placed started getting on her wound and her skin, her towels and her things, and basically engulfed her in trash and all the things that people would be collecting in biohazard suits. My grandmother was horrified, thinking that we were also sitting on this, and my mother looked at the two of us knowing that we did this. She could not say a word and she started shoving us away from the beach in a hurry to get me out. Me and my mom's sister started laughing as my grandmother said,
"Oh, praise the Lord that we didn't get cut like that, woman, and it just was the grace of God that saved us."
Me and my mother's sister continued laughing as my mother took us aside and told us off. My mother threatened to punish me, usually shaking me hard, yelling at me as she couldn't ground me on a holiday, but my mother's sister took the blame and told me that it was worth it. We sat down in a cafe to get some cold drinks and lunch. Only after about an hour and a half, we saw a few paramedics that started coming towards the beach by maybe 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. The medical care in Ukraine on holiday locations is piss poor, and the only way you get a doctor helping you is if you are actually dying, if that. It was also the dead heat of the day, so the medical paramedics would be too lazy to go to the beach and no one came to help until the sun came down. There was a guy who got tangled in a parachute and help arrived an hour and a half later. So it was safe to assume that these paramedics were for the entitled mother, and that was a satisfying moment as we had realized this woman was basically rolling in a cesspool of illness business for at least an hour or two before any help arrived, baking in the 35+ degree sun. We most likely ruined this woman's holiday and have most likely put her out of commission for a long time, as those bottles and that hazardous sand and cigarette pits would have definitely given her an infection or at least seriously made it worse. The paramedics and doctors also need bribes there, so this help probably cost her about 500 euros in bribes only, not even counting the cost of the treatment. There are no cameras around, no people who cared, and no proof that we did it, and no way of ever finding us. Hopefully next time that lady learns some manners. Lesson of the story is don't pick a fight with someone and underestimate their mindset, because you may stumble onto sociopaths who will get back at you for being such a delightful person. When you grow up without the internet and only part-time cable TV, you find alternative entertainment procedures which mostly revolve around making a crappy person's day even crappier. So, was I the jerk? This one is pretty extreme. This family might end up getting some serious infections. I know a lot of beaches all over the world are pretty polluted and people don't take care of them, but this one sounds particularly bad. People are just used to having glass hidden inside of the sand all over the place. There's no lifeguards anywhere in sight, there's no police activity, and the paramedics are too lazy to go down when it's hot to pick up people that are in need. It kind of creates a situation where the beach itself in the middle of the hottest part of the day is a no man's land, a wild west where anything goes. The entitled mother obviously initiated this because she went up and started calling them bees and a bunch of other profane terms and saying that it was her spot and they need to move, when this family, the OP's family, obviously got there early in the morning, not only to secure the spot but to beat the heat too. So do you think this revenge was going way too far, or do you think this was justified somehow? Let me know down below and how you would have handled this if this was the woman that you were dealing with. And of course, let me know jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for not wanting to make my friend a wedding dress for the cost of materials? So I have a degree in fashion, which some people think means that I can be their personal seamstress. I'm used to this problem and I don't mind helping people, but I never work for free. My pregnant friend recently reached out to me and asked me if I could make her wedding dress and send me pictures of the idea that she had in mind. It isn't exactly a simple dress, but it's also not the most complex one I've done either. I told her that I could for sure do that for her and it would cost 600 pounds. She was shocked at this and told me that she thought that I would do it for free and she just pay for materials. I pointed out how many hours this would take me to do and all of the hand embroidery needed. Then I explained I was doing this for a quarter of the price I'd charge other people because she's my friend. At this point, she started to get very upset, telling me I have no idea how much stress that she's under with the wedding and the fact that she's pregnant and how money is tight and how this should be my wedding gift to her and how great it would look in my portfolio. I don't think I'm being unreasonable to want some money for this, but other friends are telling me it's horrible how I'm wanting to charge her for this and it's not like I'm a high-end bridal shop. Am I being unreasonable? Am I the jerk? Why would the friend assume that the original poster here was going to do it for the cost of materials when that's not even something that they had talked about before? I know the prices of wedding dresses can be insane. They go up to be very, very, very expensive in the thousands of dollars. So getting a custom made one from scratch seems pretty cheap for 600 bucks. It really comes down to the matter of hours. If you're asking somebody for a favor like, hey, can you help me out for 30 minutes with your specialty craft, whatever that is, that's a whole lot different than telling somebody, hey, I need you to do 50 hours of labor and I'm only going to pay you for materials on this. At that point, it's more than a full-time job trying to make this thing, whereas it would be a lot cheaper in terms of how much time you're spending to just buy somebody a wedding gift and not put hour upon hour of creating a dress from scratch and doing all of the revisions that come afterwards. I don't think this is unreasonable at all. I think the most important thing is that she was upfront before starting the process, which is what the original poster did here. But unfortunately, either way, this is probably going to be a fracture in the relationship one way or another. If one of your friends asks you to do whatever it is that you specialize in, and it was an enormous amount of time like this, how would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for arranging a potluck for my sister's apology dinner? So my mom decided to host an apology dinner for my older sister. As my mom was busy writing her apology and whatnot, she asked if I would take care of the food and beverages. I said sure, thinking it would just be for my family of 4, but when my aunts and cousins heard, they also wanted to attend, so I decided to make it a potluck. A potluck is where all the adult guests bring a dish and all the dishes are shared. Of course, I never asked my sister to bring any food because she was the guest of honor. Well, everyone came over and we were all excited to listen to the apology and eat. My sister was among the last to arrive and she was offended that we were serving potluck for her special dinner. I explained that I had carefully planned what would be served. My sister's boyfriend is a vegetarian, so we had 2 meatless options. But my sister yelled at me that the apology apology meal should be prepared, or at least paid for by the apologizer, my mom, in order to show proper atonement. We went forward with the apology dinner, but my sister called me a jerk for undermining the apology. Am I the jerk for arranging a potluck for my sister's apology dinner? We've actually talked about another apology dinner in a separate story way back, but I've never heard of this actually being a real thing in real life. The way that the OP describes it here is as if it's such a formal, official thing. This is now the apology dinner where this must happen and this must happen. The OP defines it by saying it's where someone apologizes to another person in front of the whole family. So if that's the case, did the aunts and cousins know that it was an apology dinner specifically and they wanted to go there to listen to somebody apologize to someone else? I was curious as to what the apology was for, and the OP actually answered that later on in response to someone else by saying the mother tried to break up the sister and her boyfriend for no good reason, his ethnicity. So let me know if you think arranging a potluck for an apology dinner was okay or not. Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for laughing after my sister implied that my brother's girlfriend's dish wasn't good at Thanksgiving? I'm a 27-year-old female and my brother John is 26. We're both very close, and I was definitely shocked when he surprised us on Thanksgiving by bringing his new girlfriend Chelsea. He was very happy though, and to be honest, that's the only thing we want for him. So we, grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, held off on all questions until another time. Anyway, dinner time rolls around and we're sharing everything, and my aunt kind of pulls me off to the side and tells me we're not going to be eating my mashed potatoes because Chelsea brought some and John asked that we serve those instead. I was a little peeved, I'm not going to lie, because I've done the mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving since I was 16, but I got over it pretty fast. I really didn't care as long as they were good. Spoiler alert, they were not good. Everything that could have gone wrong with those potatoes went wrong. They were raisins. She was really excited though, so when she asked everyone if they were good, she got some mm-hmms. You know, the kinds you do with your mouth closed and an uncomfortable smile on your face. Everything else was good, so her dish was highlighted. We all thought we passed it though until my nephew spit it out onto a tissue. She said something about not pleasing everyone to lighten the mood because we were all looking at him, and my brother went, "I'm sure they're glad to have a break from OP's potatoes anyway," and then laughed. I wasn't going to say anything, but my sister, who's 22, said, "We are not," in the most monotone voice, and I just laughed, man. Like one burst of a cackle. Chelsea teared up and the rest of the night was awkward. My brother called me a jerk and is still mad at me. So am I the jerk? The brother obviously knew that the OP always makes mashed potatoes because she's been doing it since she was 16, but he told his girlfriend to make those anyway, or made it seem like it was okay for her to make those anyway. And then when people obviously didn't like them, he tried to throw his sister, the OP, under the bus again by saying, "Oh boy, we're sure glad that we don't have to eat her potatoes anymore," which would maybe be funny if that was sort of true, but it sounds like everyone loves the OP's potatoes, mashed potatoes. Maybe Chelsea, the girlfriend here, doesn't know how to make anything else, and that would explain a lot. But if that was the case, why wouldn't the brother give anyone a heads up that she was coming in the first place? So that way they could say, "Hey, we don't have this other food," or something. It feels like the brother's the one who's a jerk here because he didn't do any of the planning and then takes the easy way out by just dumping on his sister instead of actually trying to set this whole thing up in advance. But let me know how you see this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. I was bullied by my evil teacher who repeatedly put me down and made fun of me because I am stupid and I can't understand everything as fast as everyone else. So I decided to record all of the hurtful things she said to me and present them to the administrator of my school. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Here's the backstory. I was a senior in high school at the time and I had never been the brightest student. I was a solid C student and I had never received a detention or had any kind of bad student record. This is important because to this day I still have no idea why the teacher treated me this way. The teacher, who we will name Mrs. Frank, had been a teacher at my school for more than a decade and was widely known for being a pretty heartless bee who the administrator saw as the golden child. Mrs. Frank taught algebra, which is my worst subject, so naturally I had issues understanding the lessons and would ask questions frequently. To some, these questions are easily answered, but to me it was rocket science. Usually when somebody asks a dumb question, no one should address it. However, in Mrs. Frank's class, she would belittle me in front of everyone by saying things such as,
"And here comes the slow boy again. Wow, surprise, surprise, you don't understand it again. Really? We're gonna go extra slow for you today, aren't we?"
etc., etc. I tried going to the administration about it before, but she was considered the golden child. They would send someone in to examine her during class. She would act respectful and normal for one day and then go back to being a B the next. This goes on for about half a year until I had enough. I went to the local Radio Shack, bought a recorder, and secretly recorded every insult she would throw at me. I would sometimes instigate to make up for the lost time. Go ahead, feed the fire. Fast forward to the end of the year and I'm sitting in Mrs. Frank's class when I ask a question. Her response was, and I quote, because it's burned into my brain,
"I've been teaching here for 10 years and that was the single dumbest question I've ever heard of come from anyone's mouth."
She continued the lesson without answering. I calmly stood up, packed my stuff, and headed to the nurse's office to dismiss myself from school. We were allowed to dismiss ourselves if we were 18. I went home, I compiled all of the brutal tapes into one glorious masterpiece, and headed back the next day to show the administrators. I sat down with the principal and we listened to a couple of the insults before he stopped me. He wanted more witnesses present, as well as Mrs. Frank. He told me he would meet the next day where I could show him and the rest of the administrators the full tape. I walk into school the next morning being the most nervous I've ever been for anything. I was called down to the office where I met with some board directors, the local school police officer, the principal, the vice principal, and Mrs. Franks. What followed were some of the greatest minutes of my entire life. I watched as the administrators went from fed up with being in another useless meeting to furious and speechless, with some of them keeping their mouths open for the entire duration of the tape. I also watched Mrs. Frank go from confident and stuck up to realizing that she had messed up beyond repair. She was publicly roasting herself in front of the most important people from the district. The tape ended, and without hesitation, the administrators looked around, and in astonishment, the principal turns to me and says, "I think we've heard everything we need to. Thank you." And I was quietly dismissed from the room. The final time I saw Mrs. Frank was leaving the room. I looked back and we made eye contact through her tear-filled eyes as I gave her the biggest, most evil smile. I returned to class the next week, and Mrs. Frank was nowhere to be found. The story spread quickly throughout the school, and I was seen as a saint. I had successfully gotten her fired and made it almost impossible for Mrs. Frank to return to her teaching career, as well as cut off most of her connections that she had with other teachers in the school. I had ruined her financially because no school district in the area would hire this walking piece of garbage. If you're reading this, Mrs. Frank, I'd like to take this moment to tell you to go bork yourself. Before you decide whether or not I'm the jerk, here's a little more information. I should have cleared this up in the story, however, I didn't want to go into too much detail about the process. Yes, this was perfectly legal to do, and my parents and I did our research to make sure we weren't breaking any kind of laws. In my state, you can record someone in their place of business without both party consent. And I want to address some frequently asked questions. I regret sharing the dumbed down version of this story because I left out a huge amount of stuff that I put my parents through during all of this. Tons of meetings and phone calls that would have made the story a lot longer, and I didn't think anyone would enjoy it. Number one, I do not still have the tapes. It was in the administration's best interest to keep them in case she sued for false termination, and it would have gone out of hand if the tapes spread and gave a bad reputation towards the district. Even if I had kept the tapes, this took place over 15 years ago, there is no way I would be able to find them. Number two, yes, I took algebra as a senior because again, I wasn't the greatest student to walk those halls, and throughout all my years of school, I had tutoring. I'm sorry I'm not a genius. And lastly, number three, I don't remember what question I asked that pushed me over the limit that day. So now that you know everything, was I the jerk? I know that teachers have an incredibly difficult job, especially year after year having to deal with the same problems in students that are solved one year and then they have to start all over again. And there are things like that with a lot of jobs. I mean, you can look at doctors and say the same thing. A doctor has a patient that comes in, he cures the patient, but then there's more people that have the same issue that come in later. For some people, that type of cycle calluses them in general towards the people that they're supposed to be helping. And it sounds like that might be exactly what's going on here with this teacher. Maybe once upon a time, she was a really sweet lady and was always helping and she really cared, and then she became this way, or maybe she was like this all along. It's just hard to imagine her lasting this long in the school district if she was like that the whole time. This story is relatable to a lot of people because a lot of you have probably had a really terrible experience with a teacher, where the teacher puts you down or tries to make you feel like you're stupid. The difference here is that this guy struck back, going to great lengths to shut her down permanently. He collected all the evidence he needed and presented it to her superiors, and so now she's out of a career. I know a lot of people are saying that that's way too far, that this is way beyond what he experienced himself, but it sort of depends on how you look at it, because it's probably not only the original poster here that had to deal with this type of strange cruelty that the teacher is raining down on him. It's probably also concurrently happening to a lot of other students, both in the present and in past years, that never said anything. So how do do you see this? Do you think this was going way too far to totally ruin her career? Or do you think this was justified? Let me know your thoughts down below, and if you've ever had a mean teacher in your life, let me know what happened down below, along with jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for throwing away my boyfriend's illegal yogurt collection? I'm a 29-year-old female, my boyfriend is 30. We've been living together for 2 years in a little studio in a very expensive, big US city. My boyfriend grew up rurally, with a lot of space, enough to collect all kinds of things. He collected action figures and video games and all the normal kid stuff when he was young. But as he grew older, he became interested in more unusual things. As a teen, he had 8 guinea pigs of different types from different breeders. Since Tide Pods were released 7 years ago, he saved one of every kind of Tide Pod. He's got a big box of international variety of electric insulators, those little ceramic hats that power lines wrap around on power poles. He's not a hoarder, he's usually neat, just used to having lots of space for his bizarro collections. At his parents' ranch, he has 2 big rooms full of containers of weird and impressive things. He recently became interested in yogurt. He has always hated dairy products until about a year ago. He just started drinking milk and sharing ice cream with me, but he's found a love for yogurts, so now he collects them, of course. The problem is that they're perishable. So until earlier, our little 550 square foot studio contained about 2,100 cups of yogurt. It comes in tons of varieties, different types, flavors, textures, containers, made by different companies in different countries. This is like crack to my boyfriend. So he pretty much tried to save a sample of everything he could find. He filled our fridge, bought a new fridge, and then another tiny beside the fridge, and then another tiny bedside fridge. He said that he didn't want to walk to the fridge at night, but it was obviously a ruse to get more yogurt space. These fridges all filled up with his yogurts, and if you keep them for long, they smell bad. Sometimes the packaging breaks, so our apartment was smelling like rotten milk for at least 2 weeks. And my boyfriend's attitude was, oh, it's fine, and just deal with it for a little longer, until I pulled the plug and I threw them all out this morning. I was looking at my groceries, which I had to put beside the fridge because there was no space, and everything smelled like death. And then I kind of snapped and I threw it all away. My boyfriend is understandably upset. We've been arguing about whether I crossed the line by throwing away his stuff, and he's especially upset because he, of course, had rare yogurts that were hard to find. In particular because he had some Cuban and Iranian yogurts that you can't get in the United States. But I know that we have trade sanctions against Iran and Cuba, so I don't know if it was even legal for him to have them. I asked him where he got his Iranian yogurt, but he kept insisting the Iranian yogurt is not the issue here, and that the real issue was me throwing out his precious yogurts without his permission. So am I the jerk here? So how do you collect yogurts? Because even if you have 3 fridges like the boyfriend had in the story, yogurts don't last forever even if you refrigerate them. Is he actually eating these, or is he just looking at them and admiring them? Anything that can perish like that doesn't really make sense to start building a collection around. But the part of this that seems like it's the most off is the fact that he didn't mind the horrible smell of all the rotting yogurts all over the place. The OP here says that he's not a hoarder, that he's neat, but yet the smell of all of this didn't bother him at all. Despite all of that, I get why he would be upset, and the OP definitely should have talked to him about it since this was his personal property, even though they do live together. But it seems like something more is going on here. 550 square feet is not very much space to fit 3 fridges, 2 of them being full-size fridges and 1 being a bedside fridge. So if your boyfriend or girlfriend was collecting this quantity of yogurt to the point where it stunk every time you went into your place, how would you handle it, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for not balding? My dad is bald and 5 of my 6 brothers are bald, and my last brother is on his way. My uncle is balding, and apparently my grandfathers on both sides have no hair too. I'm 34 years old, past the age any of them had lost their hair, and I still have my hair. Apparently being bald is some bizarre cult identity for all of the guys in my family now, and every time there is a family gathering there is huge drama. I've been told to shave it, and I've been accused by my brothers of getting a secret hair transplant and using anti-baldness medication, etc. My dad won't speak to me right now because over Christmas he kept joking that I wasn't actually his child and mentioning that I should go check with a doctor to check if everything is okay. I did get very angry and I told him it was ridiculous, and being bald shouldn't be a part of their identities. I am very happy and proud of my hair, and the whole thing just feels ridiculous and smells of jealousy to me. They think that I am a jerk for the crime of having hair and for not laughing along, but the jokes barely conceal some real contempt, and I've had enough of it. Am I I the jerk? This is truly bizarre. Maybe the family seems to think that these jokes are actually in some sort of lighthearted spirit and the OP is interpreting them as being mean-spirited. But even that seems like a stretch because of the facts that were presented here. The OP specifically says, my dad won't speak to me right now because over Christmas he kept joking about the whole doctor thing. So it's not that the OP won't speak to his dad because he was upset about these jokes, it's that the dad was upset because of what? That he has hair or that he didn't go to the doctor to actually get checked out? Because if that's the case, then it wasn't a joke at all. He's being pretty serious about it. The whole thing seems insufferable. But if this was your bald family and you were the only one that wasn't bald, and this is how they were treating you, what would you do? And let me know, jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for leaving my boyfriend because of Danny DeVito? I'm a 31-year-old female and my boyfriend, who's 33, really likes Danny DeVito. We've been together for 6 years now and he has always liked Danny DeVito. Even when we first got together, he had a cardboard cutout of him he got a few years before we even got together. It never even bothered me until we started working from home because of COVID. And honestly, it didn't even bother me. It bothered one of his colleagues. He has a well-paid job and is thought of very highly in his workplace and has been told by his boss that when he retires next year, he will be recommending him for the job. He has been there for 12 years and this will really be a huge advancement for him and he deserves it. Now for the strange part. Due to him working from home, he has been doing a lot more video calls and his boss's boss, Jay, really does not like the Danny DeVito cardboard cutout. He asked him to remove it during a meeting, so he did and the meeting carried on. The week after that, in another meeting, it was back in its usual spot. After that meeting, Jay asked my husband to hang on and blew up at him over the cardboard cutout being back. He snapped back that he is unable to tell him how to decorate his house. Unless he formally puts it in writing, he won't be removing Danny DeVito. So, would I be the jerk for leaving my boyfriend because of Danny DeVito? It's hard to imagine why the boss would care so much that there's a Danny DeVito cardboard cutout in the background. From the sounds of it, these meetings are just internal business meetings, not the forward-facing presentation to their clients or something. But even if it's hard to imagine a cardboard cutout of a guy being that distracting, if somebody comes to you sincerely and says, hey, this is hard for me to focus because of this thing, and they ask you to just move it out of the frame, that's one thing because the boyfriend did do that during the first meeting. But what fractured this whole situation is when during the second meeting, the boss just blew up on him, demanding that he do what he says about the Danny DeVito cardboard cutout. Both sides have some degree of a valid point, but the odd part here is that it seems like the OP, the girlfriend here, only sees it from the boss's side, not really considering that decorating his own home is his right, just like it's the right of the business to choose who they want to employ. So how do you see this? Who's in the right, who's in the wrong, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for refusing kids at adult breakfast? Every year for over a decade, my siblings, a 43-year-old sister, a 40-year-old brother, and a 33-year-old brother, and I'm 43, have breakfast on Christmas morning. They have always been hosted at my home, no kids, or my sister's home, 2 children, more adults. Every year, as we are organizing the breakfast in the days and weeks leading up to the holiday, we are reminded by the respective host that it is siblings and spouses only, neither children nor parents. Every year, my youngest brother, who has 2 children, an 11-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl, and his wife either ignore the rules or get upset about the rule and don't show up. This year, when advising of the location more than a week before, I reminded my brother of the rule. He acted as if he'd never heard of such a request. I do understand that finding a babysitter during the holidays can be tough. I suggested he ask our mother or his mother-in-law or anyone else if they could watch the kids for a couple of hours if they aren't busy. On Christmas Eve, I asked his wife if they were coming. She said they were, along with my mom and sister and adult nephew, who's 18. With much of the other family present, including sister-in-law, we had a laugh about how my grandmother did the same with her siblings, not allowing kids, and how my niece and nephew were also excluded from ours. My mother mentioned that she had wanted to carry on the tradition, but her siblings didn't care to. My nephew was very accepting of the tradition, both as a minor and still as an adult. Last night on Christmas Eve, my brother texted me and said that if they could not bring the kids, they could not come. Our mother will be out of town with her husband's family for the morning, so I again suggested he ask his mother-in-law as she lives nearby, and they are going directly there just 2 hours after our breakfast start time. He has still not replied, and breakfast starts in 45 minutes. My other siblings and I are saddened that he might not attend, but agree that our brother should respect the fact that this is the one time per year when it's just us. So, am I the jerk for refusing kids at the adult breakfast? This just sounds like bad timing. I definitely get having a time where you want to spend time with your siblings without any kids there, but why Why does it have to be on Christmas morning? That's the hardest time possible to find somebody to temporarily babysit your kids, even if it's your own family. And more importantly, most parents would want to spend Christmas morning with their kids specifically. In some families, that's the time when the kids open up their presents and get to run around and be excited. So this whole thing seems like it would work a lot better if it was the day after Christmas or sometime around it that wasn't on Christmas itself. So who do you think is in the right here? Let me know down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. Am I the jerk for ruining Thanksgiving? I'm a 30-year-old female and I met my boyfriend who's 30 3 years ago. Before me, he was together with his high school sweetheart. They fell out of love and broke up. A year later, we started dating. His mom, however, was still heartbroken about it, and I was very understanding and thought that she needed time to get to know me. The ex basically grew up with them and they saw her as a part of the family. For the first year of my relationship, his mom would call me the ex's name until my boyfriend got angry once and told her to be nice. She laughed it off and said it was just a habit. After that, she started calling me the wrong name, Janet instead of Jenny, fictional names for the story. I corrected her a couple of times, but she seemed to like hurting me, so I ignored it later. My boyfriend has 2 sisters, and a couple of weeks ago before Thanksgiving, we were invited to a barbecue at the older sister's house. I was in the kitchen with my boyfriend's mom, the sisters, and one of their husbands. The older sister then talked about how my boyfriend praised my cooking to her husband, and the mom was listening. She then said out loud,
"Sure, why don't we let Janet make the turkey this year?"
The sisters giggled and looked at each other, and I said, "That's a great idea." I didn't tell my boyfriend what happened. On Thanksgiving, we went to his mom's house with the usual wine and dessert. She was shocked. Everybody was shocked. And I said, "What? I thought Janet is bringing the turkey." There was yelling, crying, and then we got kicked out. My boyfriend is so angry with me, he hasn't talked to me since. I think it's over, to be honest, but I still don't think I did anything wrong. Did I? Am I the jerk? This was some pretty perfectly executed karmic revenge. The mom had probably gotten so used to purposely saying her name wrong that she didn't even think that this was very well played. The downside to this is that the collateral damage is the whole rest of the family who probably weren't being jerks to the OP here, but they don't have turkey on Thanksgiving, which they probably were looking forward to. So was the damage done worth the heroic karmic justice here? That's the question. Let me know what you think down below, and jerk or not a jerk and why. A group of entitled customers completely humiliates a waiter and makes her cry. So our entire restaurant staff gets a brutal revenge on them and creates a disgusting special meal to serve them since they made us open when we were closing. Here's how it happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Here's some backstory. In the country where I live, the people here are not native English speakers, although 85 to 90% of people can understand English and less than that can converse in fluent English. This plays a part later on. This was around 2010 when the call centers were being outsourced to other countries. No, I am not from India. Many wanted to get employed by these call centers as they pay 2 to 4 times more than the pay of regular workers. However, only a select few get hired, as one of the requirements is you must be fluent in English. So those that get hired sometimes act entitled, stuck up, and privileged, though not everyone. I was working at a small pizzeria at this time after graduating culinary school when this happened. So the people involved were the entitled customer, the waitstaff, and me. I was the head chef. It was about 5 minutes until our closing time and was getting so slow that the waitstaff asked my permission if we can start closing and cleaning up early, and I nodded to agree and proceeded to the kitchen. I asked my crew to turn off and clean the ovens and pack up. About 15 minutes into this, I heard some yelling outside and some crying. I peeked from the kitchen and saw that our waitstaff was being harassed by a group of 8 and crying. Naturally, I come over and talk to my waitstaff as to what happened. Apparently, the group arrived 5 minutes after closing and demanded to be served. They were working from a nearby call center and they were berating my waitstaff after my waitstaff was telling them that we were closed. They spoke to her in English to show their superiority, I guess, and told her not to argue since she is just a waitress. And since they are paid more and can speak English, they should be served properly. Keep in mind that my waitstaff can understand English, but just can't converse in it fluently. I, however, can, so I turned to the group and asked, what happened here? The entitled customer said,
"Your waitress is stupid and should be fired. We want to order and she told us you're closed."
But we are closed.
"No, that's not right. That's not the right customer service you should be giving. The customer is always right, and we want to order, so you should take it. We can buy anything we want, and you should just comply."
At this time, I was getting annoyed, so I took their order, signaled my kitchen staff to refire up the ovens. This really annoy them as I just finished cleaning them and make the pizza. I then went to my waitstaff and comforted her until she calmed down and then went to the kitchen to check on the pizza. What I didn't know was that my waitstaff heard the commotion and enacted a revenge plan. One of the staff opened the grease trap. It was a small box below the kitchen sink which traps all of the gunk and grease before it gets into the sewers. They got a handful of this nasty gunk and smeared it on top of the pizza dough. Then the staff took turns snotting and spitting on the dough, and some even pulled their private hair and spread it on top. Then they covered it all with tomato sauce, cheese, and put the toppings across the entire pizza and cooked it to perfection. I asked one of the kitchen staff to serve it as my waitstaff was still crying from the experience. Boy, did we watch them eat it. We watched them having fun eating the pizza, and we were watching them with delight as well. So don't be mean to the restaurant staff, as you never know what happens in the kitchen. Were we the jerks for our revenge? This revenge was pretty disgusting. I always wonder how often stuff like this actually happens, and for those of you that have worked inside of a restaurant, do you actually see people messing with customers' food often, or is that a rare thing? In this case, I think because they were all on the same page, everyone was upset with these people because they had already turned off the oven and had made the waitstaff cry. There was nothing stopping them, no checks and balances to make sure that this food didn't get totally messed with. But hopefully in a normal scenario, this doesn't happen all the time for no reason. Either way, don't be mean to people that are handling your food, but not because they're gonna mess with your food, but because why? There's no reason to be like that, and the people in this story that were coming from the call center obviously had a crazy inflated sense of ego to think that they could act like this to anyone, let alone people that were making their food. Let me know how you would handle the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My landlord, a slumlord, tried to illegally evict me and strong-arm me and my husband to get out of his house. So I get revenge by exposing all of his dirty laundry and cost him everything, including losing his own properties. Here's what happened. This happened back in 2010 when I lived in Winter Garden, Florida with my husband and his dying uncle. So the background is my husband and I moved in with his sick uncle after losing so much during the 2008 housing market crash in the United States, like many of my husband's law maintenance customers. We also moved in with his uncle into a condo because his uncle has stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver, and his self-entitled sister and her family refused to help take care of him. My husband, a retired county sheriff officer, which is important later, and I got ourselves set up in the condo's 2 bedrooms as his uncle had himself set up in the living room, including his bed. On the first day, we found dangerous black mold caused by a leaky dishwasher. On the second day, we found the master shower had loose tiles and a leaky shower head. On the third day, we found a nest of brown recluse spiders in the living room. We talked with his uncle about these problems and found out that the slumlord, friends with the self-entitled sister/aunt and her family, was refusing to take care of the issues as required by law. We wanted to start legal actions then, but my husband's uncle talked us out of it several times. The slumlord was nice to us as long as my husband's sick uncle was alive. The very next day after my husband's uncle died was a completely different story. The slumlord had turned nasty, aggressive, and began to try and strong-arm evict us like we were nothing more than drug addict squatters. The slumlord even tried to aggressively fight my husband when we dropped off our next rent check. He kept telling us that we had to move out or else, but yet refused to actually follow Florida laws to evict us. The slumlord and his corrupt Winter Garden Police Department code enforcement officer's wife even recruited my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle to start harassing us about just moving even if we want to live in a tent.
And my nephew just moved so they can rent the condo to another senior.
Husband said, we don't have anywhere else to go yet, and he must go through the eviction laws or get into very serious trouble. Self-entitled aunt said,
you're nothing but trouble. A retired SCSD officer, nephew. You've been problem since the day you were born. Get out of their condo and stop being a problem for everyone. Who cares if you have to live in a tent?
All of this made my retired SCSD officer husband, who specialized in uncovering corrupted law enforcement, very suspicious. We talked and began investigating the slumlord and the corrupt code enforcement wife. My first order was to place all of the rent into escrow with evidence of repairs that had been neglected. Second, I sent a notification of cease and desist harassment to the slumlord and self-entitled aunt. Next, I researched public property tax records. Woohoo! Pay dirt there. Slumlord's condo wasn't registered as a rental property with the state of Florida, and thus was paying far less in property tax than the slumlord should have been paying. Property tax records also show that the slumlord did not own the condo. It was still deeded to his mother, which I found out had been living living in a retirement home for 5 years before my husband's uncle moved in. My husband found out that the corrupt code enforcement wife had been inspecting and signing off on hers and her slumlord's properties, including the condo, which is against Florida code enforcement conduct laws. I found out from neighbors in the condo that the slumlord had only been renting to seniors with severe health issues. My best discovery, though, next to tax evasion, was finding out that the Condo Owners Association had a very strict no renting/leasing policy, meaning you or your family had to live in the condo and it couldn't be rented. The revenge. Now that we had all of our evidence, my husband and I began to knock down all the slumlord's dominoes. My husband went and filed a complaint with the Winter Garden Police Department about the corrupt code enforcement's wife and her perjuring inspections on her family properties. My husband has a glowing record in the county with the FDLE for having over 200 clean arrests and taking down nearly 60 corrupt public officials, including protective services in the early 2000s. This background helped push WGPD, the police department, to open an investigation into the corrupt code enforcement wife. They discovered that not only had she perjured inspections on her family's properties, but also on my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle's properties as well. This got corrupt code enforcement wife fired, stripped of her state enforcement officer's license, and convicted of multiple crimes. I sent all property tax fraud evidence to the Florida Property Tax Division. That got the state to investigate the slumlord. The state found out that not only did he commit property tax fraud on the condo, but also on a property that he was renting to his son and his self-entitled aunt's son, along with business tax fraud and income tax fraud. Both slumlord's son and self-entitled aunt's son were also busted for possession of illegal narcotics with the intent to sell when investigators came to the rental house that they lived in. I never expected that much fraud to be found from all of this, but I'm glad it happened. The business tax fraud of the slumlord affected the self-entitled aunt and self-entitled uncle as well, since they were his business partners. The self-entitled uncle came under investigation by the USPS board because he was the postmaster of Winter Garden. USPS, of course, being the United States Postal Service. The self-entitled uncle also lost his comfy job and pension after it was discovered that he was assisting the slumlord in the tax fraud scam for stealing money orders. All four were convicted of multiple white-collar crimes, had to sell their properties, most of their stuff, serve some form of time, and pay huge amounts of fines and restitution. The slumlord, his wife, the husband's self-entitled aunt, and my husband's self-entitled uncle, along with their sons, all went down for multiple crimes, both felonies and misdemeanors, all because they thought that they could strong-arm evict us. It just proves how smart we, the tenants, can really be when pushed. It also proves why everyone should know all the rental laws and how to research public records, because it can save you in the end. So, am I the jerk for going after the slumlord because he tried to strong-arm evict us? If you move into a new place and on the first day you find black mold because of the leaky dishwasher, and then by the time you're on the third day you find a nest of brown recluse spiders in the living room, you should probably leave if you can. Obviously, in this case, that wasn't an option, but black mold is obviously not good for the human body, and if you get bit by a black recluse spider, the venom can cause necrosis where all the tissue around the bite dies, so it can be pretty serious. Anyway, this revenge was pretty thorough. They basically went through all the laws in their area and just hit him from all angles. The fact that he was doing tax evasion on top of everything definitely is not going to help his case in the future. And not only did they lose the properties, but the uncle also lost a job and pension because he was involved in the whole tax fraud scam as well. So it really was a concentrated, thorough revenge by someone who was pushed too far. Let me know what you would do if this was your landlord, and if you've ever been in a situation like this before, let me know down below too. But most importantly, jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for not packing my husband's bags so he could go spend Christmas with his family without me? I'm a 30-year-old female, and I've been with my husband Ted, who's 34, for 4 years. We got married 2 years ago. His family and I haven't really gotten along too well. They're rich and they're all about image. I only see them on occasions, but that's when the drama is at its highest rate. Last Christmas, Ted and I traveled to spend Christmas with them, and it was awkward for some reason. After we went back to the hotel, his mom sent me a list of all the things I've done wrong at her house, like bringing the wrong wrong type of desserts, and wearing, quote, inappropriate clothes. I wore a blouse and leather jacket, and not standing up when guests arrive. This year, my mother-in-law only sent an invitation to Ted to spend Christmas with the family. He told me that his mom didn't invite me because of last year's negative points and would rather just have him there this year. I was flabbergasted, and I asked if he was actually considering going after his mom excluded me, and he shrugged and said yes, because he never spent Christmas away from family his entire life, and he isn't about to break the cycle now. He suggested I go out, invite Regina, my best friend, over, and plan my own celebration, and said, quote, but nothing too crazy, capiche? I was upset, but hey, if they don't want me, then I shouldn't force it, and tried not to feel hurt and offended. Yesterday, Ted came home asking if his bags were ready since it was time to go. I said, I don't know, and he was stunned. He freaked out, saying I knew he was going to travel to his hometown and I should have packed his bags like I always do. I admit that packing his bags is what I do, but only when we're traveling together. And I figured since he was traveling on his own, he should pack them himself. He lost it, saying I just caused him to be late and ruined everything, the flight, the hotel, the other reservations and arrangements that he had, just because I was being bitter because I wasn't invited to Christmas celebration with his family. We had a heated argument and he said, look, you're really overreacting right now because it's not like I'm going away on a vacation to another country to spend time with some strippers and whatnot, though I'm pretty certain you wouldn't be half as pissed and agitated as you are now. I'm just gonna spend time with my family, and quite frankly, I don't know what is with you anymore. Then he proceeded to call me petty and say that I got him in trouble and punished him by not packing his bags for him, knowing that he was going to travel. He packed his bags in a rush and ended up forgetting most of the gifts that he got for his family. He is now not speaking to me. So am I the jerk? Maybe in some families, some cultures, some groups of people, that's normal to pack for somebody when you're not traveling with them, but I don't think I've ever known somebody who packs for somebody else on a trip that only one of them is going on. I mean, obviously with little kids that are being sent off, their parents will sometimes pack their bags, but I've never heard of this being the case, just non-verbally communicated and only assumed. There's a really brief edit where the OP actually updates and says that it's not just the mother-in-law, but father-in-law and Ted's brothers also figured it would be best that she doesn't attend their Christmas and instead go to her own family, so that way nobody has to deal with any tension. So whatever happened that previous year didn't only make a mark on the mother-in-law, but the father-in-law and Ted's brothers. I think I would be pretty shocked too if I found out that even though I thought I was behaving normally, everyone disliked me for this whole checklist of reasons like the mother-in-law sent to the OP here. But if you were in that situation, how would you handle it, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for telling my coworker I will cover up my shoulders when he starts wearing shoes? My workplace doesn't have a dress code, so everyone dresses very casually. Today I was wearing a tank top with thin straps and long pants and my shoulders were showing. One of my coworkers, Brian, was giving me angry looks all day long, and when I finally asked him what's wrong, he told me that he thought better of me than to dress in, quote, barely any clothes when coming to work. At that moment, Brian was wearing pretty short shorts and was barefoot. He dressed like this the whole summer. The office is carpeted and he only puts on his slippers if he's going to the bathroom or to the kitchen. I told Brian that I will start covering up my shoulders when he starts wearing shoes to the office. If I have to look at his hairy toes at work, he can deal with the side of my shoulders. That, of course, didn't help. He put on his headphones and didn't even look in my direction for the rest of the workday. Now I'm wondering if I was wrong to say that. He is a coworker and I should strive for good work relationships, but I felt insulted, so I kicked it back at him. Am I the jerk? What kind of office allows you to come to work and not wear shoes all day? Is this an actual thing in actual offices, or is this an office in a commune in the remote mountains? People get upset when people take off their shoes and they don't have socks on in an airplane, and that's only for a short amount of time. But this is all day, every day. And why does he care about her shoulders? I have so many questions here. Obviously, what she said about him not wearing shoes upset him, but what would you tell a guy who didn't wear shoes at work all day long that you needed to cover up your shoulders? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for calling the people that use Ring cameras in my neighborhood creepy? My parents and I moved to a new town from a city. I have started started dating a girl from my soccer team, and I'm also a girl. I found out that my neighbors have cameras looking outside of their house to the street and mini park, where my mom said that one of the neighbors had sent a picture of me and my girlfriend in the park at 6 p.m., kind of pettily hinting that I should not be outside there at night. It felt so creepy that the neighbor did that, and it also felt weird that I know he never does that to my straight friends who hang out there, even much later. Even though my parents know I am a lesbian, many people's parents might not know or accept that, and he could get someone hurt. Anyway, a few days later, I was going to help my friend from school replace shifters on her bike. A different neighbor of mine sent a picture of me to my mom where I was coming down the street on a bicycle too big for me, commenting that this was not my bike, seeming to imply that I stole it. Anyways, I was starting to get really creeped out. I'm in this neighborhood watch Facebook group that most of the parents on the block are in, but I've never even posted there before. But this time, I took the pictures that my mom had got of me and I made a post saying this: "Hey neighbors, I am OP. I go to school and I'm a junior. I've been noticing a local safety concern I want to make you aware of. Several times in the last few weeks, I've been filmed on the street or in the public park by strangers. I am 16 and so was my partner, and we were very creeped out and uncomfortable to know that we were being recorded in a private romantic moment when we thought we were alone. Another time, someone took this picture when I was biking home alone in the evening. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm serious. See the pictures here. Please take care if you have younger children or even if you are going out alone as a woman." I didn't know what to expect, but it really blew up. Some parents saw it as creepy that someone was taking that kind of photo, but then the wife of the man who took a photo of my girlfriend and I commented. She was saying that her husband only took the photo because he wanted to check with my parents about me being out past dark. I said it was 6 p.m. and that I knew her husband wasn't taking pictures of the many straight couples I know, mentioning a few friends I checked with, and her husband was acting differently towards taking pictures of lesbians. She sent me an angry reply accusing me of calling her husband a pervert. Now this is where I may have messed up. I said, "I'm not trying to call him a pervert, I'm trying to call him a bigot." She got mad enough to call my mom, who sent her to voicemail, but the post also blew up with arguments. A lot of people were saying stuff like it's not cool to take pictures of minors without their parents knowing. Some were defending the picture taking. So am I the jerk for posting that on Facebook? A lot of people that have Ring cameras only use them to film exactly what's in front of their house, so that way they can ward off from people trying to break in or people stealing their packages or whatever. And that's a different circumstance than having somebody point their camera at the public park or any other community property, because that is pretty weird. You should be able to be there without being surveilled the entire time. For the people that think that this isn't a big deal, what if the situation involved a public pool? If filming the park 24 hours a day is normal, would filming a pool that anyone can use in the community be normal too? I think that makes it even easier to see that that is weird. I mean, obviously, if it's your own pool, it's your own outdoor area, that's one thing, but this is not what happened in this situation. This kind of bleeds over into the whole area with having drones, where if you have a personal drone just floating above your house, surveilling everything, some people think that's sort of a gray area. Let me know where you are on this whole surveillance issue, and also, do you think the husband here was a bigot or not? And of course, jerk or not a jerk, and why? I found out my boyfriend has disgusting, exposed, revealing photos of his fully grown sister, and he still keeps them. But then I found out why, and I was horrified. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My ex Jake and I broke up in September of 2021. He was a complete jerk, and I should have ended it much sooner than I did. He would gaslight me, he bled me dry financially, and near the end, he even tried to do the unspeakable act to me. I left a few weeks earlier, and I can't even begin to describe how much I hate him for what he put me through. Roughly a year before we ended it, he was on 4chan. He is obsessed with the horrible side of the site, if that highlights what a creep he is, and someone posted a picture, a private picture of a woman, but in that photo, she was still partially covering herself. He immediately realized that it was his sister. Apparently, there is a game that they play on that site where the author will say, if the stamp on your comments is a certain number, I'll post the pictures. In this case, it was 711. Jake tried twice and he hit the number. The pics were then posted. 3 of them, fully private pics. He thinks that his sister, let's call her Jen, was dating someone in college, did a video stream, and the guy did a screen grab of it. He thinks that must have happened about 5 years prior to the pics being shared online. He also thinks that the guy in question around that time is Jen's current husband. He was the only one to his knowledge that she was dating. Jake thinks that he may have uploaded uploaded the pictures. Jen and her husband have had a very difficult marriage. She wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and her husband works tirelessly to keep up with her demands. All of this, besides Jen's clearly troubled marriage, is just a theory. I have no context outside of his guesses. He saved the pictures to his phone, and I was immediately freaked out. I told him to delete them, that it was bad enough that they had been uploaded to the internet, and the post at that point had vanished, so it wouldn't be a simple task of reporting it. He refused. He said he may need the pictures at some point in the future. What? And I had no way of getting the pictures deleted myself, so I figured I would keep trying to convince him to do the right thing over time. At one point, I forgot about the photos while dealing with the rest of his nonsense, and he broke his phone screen. He needed help saving his data, so I let him upload everything to my Microsoft 365 drive that I never use, and then re-download everything back to his phone. Keep in mind, I had forgotten about the pictures. Some family background is needed now. Jake and Jen are the only two children. Their parents divorced when they were very young, but both stayed in their lives. Jake's mother divorced her very abusive father and decided to seek treatment for the trauma that he caused her. She lost custody of them to their father and spent the next 10 years working on herself, therapy, anxiety meds, everything. She was not this broken person before she met their father. I met her and I loved her so much. Compared to the stories that I was told about her neglecting her children, she was 100% not what I imagined. She wished that she could have been more involved in her children's lives. She saw them every weekend, but she knew that she couldn't mentally handle being there like they needed. She also works tirelessly to connect with them now as adults. Their father essentially spent those 10 years pitting them against each other, brother against sister, children against mother. Jake followed in his father's footsteps of being an abusive and manipulative person. Jen became obsessed with being daddy's perfect little white picket fence daughter and got married right out of college and immediately started pumping out grandkids. They both still treat their mother very poorly. Jen is also a terrible person in my opinion and treated me horribly during the few times we interacted. I love trying new things. I ride motorcycles and I am very much a social butterfly. Their extended family adored having me over and would insist on me being invited to family events. During those events, Jen never hesitated to try and make my pursuits of happiness, starting a business, building a home from the ground up, getting a dog, traveling, etc., look like childish and reckless pipe dreams, all while talking trash behind my back. Sidebar, after I broke up with Jake, I accomplished everything that I wanted. Take that, Jen. We were in no way friends. Now, Jake and Jen's father has far more debt than he has cash, but he does have a house. The father has already said that he would give the house to whoever had kids first. Classic. Which ended up being Jen, who is now on her third child. She already has a house of her own, and so does Jake. Jake didn't really bring this up when Jen started having kids, but anytime his father brought up how the handover his home would go, Jake became oddly quiet. Flat out, a part of me thinks he wants to use the pictures to blackmail Jen into handing over the house after his father dies. And that brings us to the present day. I moved out and recently started receiving alerts from Microsoft 365, the look back on this moment kind of emails that just send picture flashbacks. At first, I didn't recognize the photos, and then it all came back to me that Jake had saved the forgotten pictures to my account and must have forgotten to clear his data after he used it. But that means now I have the pictures too. Now, like I said, I don't like Jen in the slightest, but I would never even dream of trying to use these pictures against her in any way, even though she treated me like trash. She may have been horrible, but I am not that kind of person. I don't think anyone should have these sort of pictures of another person without their knowledge. But what do I do now? If I just told Jen, she would not believe me. A part of me doesn't care if she does, but a bigger part of me knows that I won't be able to shake this haunting feeling that my ex is just waiting to blackmail her, and if I don't have proof, he's going to destroy her family for something that she did when she was younger. I have no love for this woman, but that is pretty messed up. The other part of me wants to delete the photos, tell her, and let her decide whether she wants to believe me and pursue it, or ignore me entirely to her own peril. The last part of me says this isn't any of my business, and even if I'm trying to help, I could cause the exact same fallout as her brother by revealing what I do know, with or without proof. So what should I do? Tell Jen and share the proof? Tell Jen Jen and delete the photos now and move on with my very happy life and just hope I forget about this over time like I did before? Please tell me what I should do. So because there was so much advice given, the OP actually responded to some of these, which gives insight into how she was thinking about the whole situation. So I'll include some of the comments to give a little bit of context to what the OP ends up saying. The top response was, do not tell her. She will flip it on you like you had something to do with it, and her scumbag brother will deny everything. Just delete everything off your computer and your accounts and be done with those people. The OP says, this is seriously what I'm leaning towards. I really don't want to get involved, but my closer friends are split. Some say that since I know, I should speak up. Others say forget about this and move on. All of them know him personally and have heard the horror stories about his family, but are split 50-50 on what I should do. The OP says that she thinks, well, what if he destroys her family and it crushes her mother? I would hate for her to be hurt by this, but I also think that if I tell her, it will result in the same thing. And lastly, there was a response that said, I get that you feel you have perhaps in your hands the ability to do some noble deed, but we're not talking about rectifying an unspeakable act or a murder here. We're just talking about some private pictures, and everyone on earth is that way at some point in the day, like when you take a shower. If it wasn't America, nobody would even be hung up about these silly pictures. Europeans will take pictures of the family at the beach, and there'll be 3 generations of people in various degrees of undress, and nobody thinks twice about it. This is not something for you to stick your neck out about. The OP's response here was, I had to sit on this for a minute. I really appreciate the perspective you are bringing. Personally, if someone shared my pictures, I could hardly care. I think she would certainly care though. Regardless of whether he reveals it or I do, I think it will result in the same fallout. If her husband was in fact the one that uploaded the pictures, she will be able to tell immediately, and it would tear the family apart either way. Despite my dislike for her, I do not want a hand in that if Jake's guesses are accurate. If his guesses aren't accurate, I'll just be setting myself up for harassment from him because I'm the only other person who knows. Either way, I will hurt myself if I tell her about the photos, and I think that I've been hurt enough by these people. I am going to delete the photos. So after that back and forth, there was actually an update. It didn't take long for someone to write what I needed to hear. Jake doesn't live far from me now, and if I were to tell Jen about the photos, his behavior is too unpredictable, so I could be putting my safety at risk if he chooses to retaliate. I also realized that if her husband was the person that posted the photos, me telling her would in no way prevent the family from having a massive fallout, and I don't want to have a hand in that. If he wasn't the one that posted the pics, I still risk exposing myself since I'm the only one that knows about them and my ex is a 4chan weirdo. So I'm going to delete the pictures and move on. They can play their games of manipulation, but I finally managed to break free and I am not going back. Am I the jerk for staying out of it? This situation is gross and bizarre. It doesn't seem like anyone thinks that this is as weird as I think it is. This guy has these pictures of his sister that he keeps. No matter what the reason is for keeping them, that is weird and gross, and will probably inevitably end his relationship with his sister if she figures this out, whether it be from the OP or by him trying to blackmail her like the OP seems to think that Jake is going to do. So if the original poster, the OP's theory here is correct, and Jake is keeping these pictures to blackmail the sister into giving him their dad's house, first of all, they're never going to speak again. He's going to permanently ruin his relationship, and I guess the original poster would probably say, well, the dad had already pitted them against each other, but this is way too far. This is extreme creepy territory. But why would that blackmail even work if it ends up being the 50% chance that these originated from her current husband, from Jen's current husband? It just doesn't logistically make sense. What would actually happen in that scenario is she would go, oh my god, husband, I can't believe you did this. But then he already knows that these pictures are out, so then Jake's plan falls apart because he no longer has leverage. The only way that maybe it would work is if these were photos for another guy and she didn't want her current husband to find out so bad that she would give away the dad's house. But no matter what happens, he's lost his relationship with her forever. And that's the OP's assumption, that Jake is going to blackmail her. If he's not going to blackmail her, I don't even want to think about why he has these. You guys let me know what your theories are down below. Do you think that the OP should stay out of this or reveal everything to Jen, and jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for yelling at my mom that I hate Harry Potter and to let me live my own life? As the title suggests, my mom is a huge Harry Potter nut. She and my dad actually met in Harry Potter IRC. It's like Discord but for older people in the early 2000s, and got married and had kids, and from day one decided to embarrass us for life by naming us after Harry Potter and Star Wars characters. It's honestly been hell. I have a stupid name, and since we were little, my parents have forced stuff like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Marvel movies, etc., down our throats. Everything is about dragons and magic and blah 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 blah. I'm so sick of it. Every birthday birthday, every holiday, everything is just organized around a fandom. So, like every Christmas, during the days leading up to Christmas, we have to sit down every night and watch the Harry Potter movies. It is so boring. I can usually get away with knitting or drawing on my iPad during this, but this year my mom was like, let's just have a technology and distraction-free night every night. I instead arranged to go over to my friend Missy's house for 2 nights. Missy's family is normal and likes things a normal amount. My mom got really mad and started talking about how it's a family tradition and how I'm basically rejecting her, and went on her whole thing about how you wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Harry Potter. I finally had it, and I just yelled, nobody cares that you were a big name in the Harry Potter fan club. I don't like Harry Potter. I don't like Star Wars. I hate Marvel movies. They're all so boring. Please just let me have my own interests. I couldn't help it. I just started crying because I was so frustrated that everything always has to be about Harry Potter this or Star Wars that, and now we're all older and they started doing this for Game of Thrones. Everything is centered around some kind of movie or TV show or book series. Just once, I want my family to band around something that doesn't have to do with media or these nerdy things. We live in Utah, where we have like 5 national parks, and even though I ask every year for my birthday, I have never even been to the Arches. Well, my sister called me saying that my mom was angry and to just come home and stop with the theatrics. I told her that I'm sick of having all this old nerd stuff crammed down my throat, and I just once want to have a normal time watching normal Christmas movies and not having to pause for lightsaber battles. Am I the jerk? If the OP's name is based on a Harry Potter character, some of them are kind of cool. She got Luna as a name. Hermione, on the other hand, might be too associated with Harry Potter to ever escape from it. They could have named her after the owl Hedwig, or just named her Dudley. But anyway, even though it seems like most kids would probably love to be in that environment, this obviously went way too far. If they have to rewatch every single Harry Potter movie every single year for their entire lives, that might end up getting a bit old, especially if these kids don't have an interest in Harry Potter or Star Wars or Marvel or whatever it is they're watching. It seems like the parents aren't hearing what the OP, the daughter here, is saying, but instead trying to diminish the whole thing because she got emotional, and because she got emotional, they're just disregarding it as theatrics, which is pretty much trying to invalidate what the daughter is trying to explain to them, that she wants to have her own identity, she doesn't like these things. And as hurtful as that might be for the parents to hear that, they gotta at least hear her. I mean, she obviously wants to go to these national parks and the parents don't seem interested in that, so maybe they can do that as a family too. So how would you handle a situation like this if you really didn't like whatever your parents' interests were and they were trying to make that your family's thing that you guys do together? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for cleaning out the fridge without telling my husband? My husband brought home a metal box that he checks on often during the day when it's in the fridge. When asked about it, he said it contains some freshly picked olives his friend Jason got from his uncle's farm and wanted my husband to keep it until he gets back from his business trip. I had no problem with him keeping it safe at the bottom of the fridge. My husband always asked me to be cautious with the box and not open it, as it would be rude to touch other people's stuff. Yesterday, I decided to clean out the fridge, which took me about 2 hours, from unplugging the fridge, emptying all the items, groceries, vegetables, containers, and washing and cleaning out the inside of it, and then letting it settle before plugging it in again. I took the box my husband brought out of the fridge and placed it on the kitchen island alongside the other containers. While I was working, I received a video call via WhatsApp from my husband while at work, feeling bored, asking what I was doing. I showed him I was cleaning out the fridge and he freaked out. He started asking about the metal box. I was confused, so I told him to calm down and showed him where the box was. He got mad, telling me I shouldn't have cleaned out the fridge nor even touched the box without telling him. I again tried to ask him to calm down, as I saw no big deal with it. His precious box was safe and sound, but he went on a rant about how the box needed to be put back inside the fridge ASAP, and he told me to plug the fridge in right then and there, but I couldn't because it was wet, and I still wasn't finished with cleaning the other parts of the fridge. Apparently, I pissed him off by stalling and he hung up, and 30 minutes later he came home and pitched a hissy fit, saying I should have picked a time where he was home to clean out the fridge so that he could take the box somewhere else to keep it cool. I said, so what? It was sitting out of the fridge for barely 2 hours, and olives can stand being outside of the fridge for a much longer period. He said, I don't get it, and took the box to leave with it. I asked where he was taking it, and he said he needed to get back to work and he had no time to explain. I shrugged this whole thing off, but he came back with it in the evening evening and put it in the fridge and then complained about me cleaning the fridge without telling him and acting dismissive of his opinions. I argued what opinions could he have on cleaning out the fridge. He argued back saying that he promised Jason he'd keep his olives in good condition and that I should have just told him. End of story. I do wonder if I messed up. He usually doesn't get that mad unless I've messed up, and I think I have. For a little more context, yes, I am aware that my husband is acting overprotective of this box, but he always acts like that whenever somebody asks him to keep an item safe for them, like furniture or car parts. And second of all, no, I haven't seen those olives myself and haven't opened the box because I didn't think I would even have to. But my husband tends to be overprotective of his friends' belongings, so I didn't give him much thought. So am I the jerk for cleaning out the fridge without telling my husband and moving this metal box that he's watching over on the kitchen island? This sounds like the first scene to a very interesting movie, where whatever is in that box ends up being the entire plot device that pushes the story of the movie forward. Is the husband secretly storing drugs in the box? Then why would he need to keep it cool? Maybe it's some sort of alien fetus that he has to transport, like in that Hideo Kojima game. Someone else said that they had a situation where an ex of theirs had a friend who was on methadone, and when he visited, he had a fridge lockbox that contained his prescription. So this whole story made them think of that. But the question still is, what's in the box? Let me know what your best theories are down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My husband asked me to steal my little brother's inheritance and give it to him. He doesn't like that I earn 4 times as much as he does and thinks that it's his right to take my little brother's inheritance money because he's married to me. But then I found out he was cheating. Here's how it happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I am leaving my husband tomorrow. I'm a 29-year-old female and my husband Jack is 30. Our marriage was short, only less than a year, but rocky from the start. I don't even know what possessed me to say yes. Maybe loneliness, maybe desperation, I don't know. He and his family are openly hostile to my only brother who's 18, as I had to take care of him after our parents died. They saw him as unnecessary, and only after the marriage I saw how horribly Jack treated him. For your information, my brother lives in our apartment, since he wasn't old enough to have his own place. Jack is, I'm almost ashamed to say, not a very good man. He is lazy and never does any house chores. My brother does everything that Jack should have done. He plays on his computer all day long and goes out to drink with his buddies almost every day. He never strikes me or my brother, but he does treat us like his caretakers, and I'm honestly getting sick of it. My last straw was when Jack insisted that I give him the inheritance money my brother was set to get for college. I refused. Money has always been a sore spot to him, as admittedly I earn 4 times what he does. And I even keep our finances separate, thanks to a lawyer uncle's advice. I fired back saying how he should stop doing freelance work that pays him dirt and not snooping around my and my brother's business. We fought, and in the middle of the fight, he left, leaving his phone behind. I don't know what caused me to poke around on his phone, but guess what? Not only is he a lazy piece of work who doesn't even have a stable job to pursue a passion I don't even understand, he's also a cheating jerk. I was heartbroken. I cried myself to sleep. Then I called my lawyer uncle to serve him the divorce paperwork. Jack doesn't know that I know about his side piece. He still treats my brother like a nuisance and demands me to hand over our inheritance to him. I kept silent. So did my brother. He's going to a weekend outing with his buddies tomorrow, and I will pack up my things and leave. Divorce papers on the table. I cut the lease to our apartment, so he'll only have a week to figure out where he's gonna go. I got a place across town closer to my relatives. I'll take care of the rest as I go. I deeply regret marrying this man. He has wasted 2 years of my life, and I am so angry at myself that I was too blind to see how I never should have married him. Tomorrow I am leaving him, and I don't care if I seem like I would not fight for my marriage. I don't have the energy to deal with a grown man who still thinks like a frat boy. So there actually was a final update to this whole thing. Over the weekend, I moved out with the help of my 2 best friends, my cousin and my uncle. They were very helpful, and in a day, we finished packing up everything and left the apartment. I'm now living closer to my uncle, my mom's little brother and his family, while my brother is waiting to move into his dorms. My uncle helped me install cameras outside of our new place, change the passwords, PIN numbers, and phone number while we're at it. I took a week off of work, and thankfully my boss understood and let me. I wish I could see his face when he came back to the apartment and found the place empty. Some of my friends were called, but they told him nothing and said that they didn't know where I went. I haven't told anyone but my uncle and my best friends. Jack came to my uncle's place, but my uncle kicked him off of his property, and while Jack threatened to go all out and contest the divorce, my uncle gave him an ultimatum in return. Sign it without a fuss or I will try to get alimony from him. Hopefully Jack won't make a hassle out of the divorce proceedings. As for myself, I'm just happy to be away from him, even with no alimony or divorce settlement. From this point onward, I will have no contact with him or people associated with him. It seems cowardly, but I'd rather avoid the drama. I believe we'll have some kind of drama later, but honestly, as long as he signs that divorce paper, I'm fine with that. I finally talked to my brother and apologized for getting him into such an environment. He was understandably disappointed with me, but forgave me. He said that he was glad that I decided to leave, and we had a good crying session over that. Right now, I'm trying to make it up to him. He's a good kid, smart and tough cookie, and he deserves better. Should he need to, we'll go to therapy, and he convinced me he was okay, but he was mostly angry on my behalf, but I'll keep an eye out for that. And to be clear, we are not from the USA, but our laws regarding marriage and divorce are pretty clean cut. I don't think that he would get any money from me. So am I the jerk for leaving my husband the way that I did by abandoning the apartment without a word after what he did to me? If you're in a relationship and you feel like you have to say, I don't know what possessed me to say yes to that relationship, maybe loneliness, maybe desperation, then you probably should not be in that relationship. That's how she opens this entire thing. So even before this whole inheritance situation, before the cheating situation, why waste either of your time by being in that relationship in the first place? On top of that, she may not have learned it until she was married, but she looks at Jack as not a very good man. He's lazy, he never does any house chores. He plays on the computer all day and goes out to drink with his buddies almost every day, and if those things already bothered her before, marrying that person is probably not going to make those things change. But with all that said, I'm trying to understand Jack's perspective on why he thinks he was deserving of this inheritance money. Because even for some, if the wife here, the original poster, were to get inheritance money, they would still say that Jack doesn't have a piece of that, doesn't have a right to have that money. But in this case, it wasn't even the original poster's money. It was her brother's money. There's no real explanation as to why he would think he deserves that money unless it was through some technicality where all the money went to the OP first and then she had to dole it out to her brother and then he wanted to intercept that money on the way there. But if that's the case, you're just stealing with more steps involved. And you add that on top of the fact that there's already a lot of financial tension because she earns a lot more money than he does, 4 times as much. It's kind of a disastrous scenario, which also kind of highlights what an empty threat the whole alimony thing was, because she says, or more specifically her uncle says, either sign the divorce paper or she'll go after you for alimony. But how could she possibly get alimony from him if she earns 4 times what he does? Maybe alimony works differently in different parts of the world, but it doesn't seem like there's any teeth to that bite. But then the whole cherry on top of all of this is that Jack was cheating on her, which I think for most people in most relationships, that's the last straw, the unforgivable point of no return, which I'm sure made the decision to divorce him that much more simple. But let me know how you see this. Do you think that Jack was in the wrong for insisting that he gets the inheritance money? Would it be different if it was her inheritance money exclusively and not her brother's? Does he have a right to that since they are married at the time? Let me know what your thoughts are down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for perpetuating ethnic stereotypes about jorts? We have 2 workplace cats in one area of our work site. They add value to the work site, we all love the cats, and the worksite cat's presence is not the issue. One of the cats, Jean, is a tortoiseshell cat we have had for years. The other cat, Jorts, is a large orange cat and a recent addition. Jorts is just kind of a simple guy. For example, Jorts can't even open a door when it's ajar. He shoves it whether he is going in or out. So often he closes the door he is trying to go through. This means he is often trapped inside the place he was trying to exit and meows until he is rescued. My colleague Pam has been spending a lot of time trying to teach Jorts things. The door thing is now the main example. It's a real issue because the cats are fed in a closet and Jorts keeps pushing the door closed. Jean can actually open all other interior doors since they are a lever type knob, but she can't open this particular door if she is trapped inside of the closets. Torty Jean is very nice to poor Jorts, and she is kept busy by letting him out of rooms that he has trapped himself in. So this seems easy to resolve. I put down a doorstop. Pam then said that I was depriving Jorts of the chance to learn and kept removing the doorstop. She set up a series of special learning activities for Jorts and tried to put these tasks on the whiteboard of daily team tasks. I erased them. She thinks that we need to teach him how to clean himself better and how to get out of minor barriers like this. And when he gets a cup stuck on his head, for example. I love Jorts, but he's just dumb and we can't change that. Don't get me wrong, watching her try to teach Jorts how to walk through a door is hilarious, but Jean got locked in the closet twice last week. Yesterday, I installed a cat cutout thing in the door and Pam started getting really huffy. I made a gentle joke about you can't expect Jean's tortoiseshell smarts from an orange cat Jorts, which made Pam furious. She started crying and left the hallway. Then she sent an email to the group including volunteers and went home early. In her email, Pam said that I was, quote, perpetuating ethnic stereotypes by saying that orange cats are dumb and is demanding a racial sensitivity training course for me before she will return. I don't think that's relevant, but just in case, Pam is a white person in a mostly minority staff. And no, she is not ginger / does not have red hair. So am I the jerk for enforcing an ethnic stereotype by joking that orange cats are often dumb? This statement actually made Pam cry and storm out of the room. If anything, it sounds like the OP here is trying to look out for the safety of the cats. If Gene already got stuck in that door that he can't open twice, what are they going to do when that happens when nobody's in the office for a long period of time and Gene is stuck in that closet without any water? Even if Pam owns an orange cat and is sticking up for all orange cats, the cat itself doesn't care if people think that he's dumb or not. Some of the responses are pointing out that if OP is cat racist, then Pam is an ableist. As pointed out in one comment, somebody says, installing a swinging kitty door, you are modifying Jort's physical environment to ensure that areas necessary for daily living, like eating, are fully accessible to him despite his disability. Repeatedly closing the door to his dining room clearly communicates Jort's desire for either this reasonable accommodation or a magic potion that would give him the ability to walk through walls. So which side of this are you on? Do you think the OP is a cat racist, or do you think that Pam is an ableist? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for snapping when I found out that a guy saw my girlfriend naked? I'm a 25-year-old male and my girlfriend Lydia is 23. She lives with a roommate who has a boyfriend, Jeff. We gathered at their place last Friday for pizza. After a while, Jeff asks Lydia if she is still scared of being here alone the nights the roommate goes over to his place and I can't come. Lydia has always had trouble with being alone at night, and most nights I stay on FaceTime with her until she falls asleep so that she feels safer. The roommate laughs and says that if she hears a noise in the bathroom, at least it will be a ghost and not her locked in passed out. Lydia, my girlfriend, just mouths to me, explain later. When we get to Lydia's room, I ask her to explain, and she tells me that this afternoon she wasn't feeling good and ended up fainting in the shower. So Jeff had to break the door to the room to get in and help her. She said that she was already feeling better and she didn't want to tell me because I was going to be worried about nothing. I said that it wasn't nothing if she had fainted and that I should be aware of these things to help her. She said that now it would just be a funny story about how Jeff broke the door and roommate had to cover her with a towel so they could come to the rescue of her naked body. That moment, I saw red. I asked if Jeff had seen her naked and she couldn't be sure since she was unconscious, but roommate said that he stood out of the bathroom until she was covered. I asked if Lydia thought it was fair for me to not know that another guy had seen her naked, and she said he didn't actually see her naked and that it shouldn't matter since he was only helping. I shouted that she just said that she was unconscious and couldn't know if he saw her. She told me to be quiet or they would hear me, and I shouted that I didn't care, that a man saw my girlfriend's body and I had the right to be mad. Jeff and the roommate come in and explain that he never saw anything. He just broke the lock and waited outside until the roommate gave him a clear. I said I didn't believe him, and the roommate jumped into his defense saying that she was right there making sure the situation wasn't embarrassing so they could take proper care of Lydia without her feeling weird. I said that if she was a kook, I wouldn't be. Jeff then shouted at me saying that I should respect his girlfriend and mine, who had spent a whole day saying that she was fine but still looked a little pale. He said that he only did it because he cared about Lydia and that I was a jerk who didn't deserve any type of help. Hearing him say that he cared about her was it for me. I left without as much as looking at Lydia as she begged me not to go. Over the weekend, Lydia had to be admitted to a hospital because she didn't feel good again, and Jeff and her roommate prohibited me from seeing her, saying that I didn't deserve her. Obviously, the whole hospital thing sucks, and I wish I was there for her, but I still think that I was right. At this point, I'm not mad at Lydia anymore, just at Jeff. So, am I the jerk? In this story, it sounds like the roommate and Jeff were legitimately just trying to help her. Unless they have a history of Jeff being creepy or weird or trying to go after Lydia for some reason, I don't really think that they would lie about that. And even in that case, the girlfriend, the roommate here, probably wouldn't be okay with Jeff having that sort of relationship with Lydia right in front of her eyes. So I doubt that there is some sort of conspiracy that the roommate, Jeff's girlfriend, and Jeff are in cahoots together to try and get Lydia hooked up with Jeff because the roommate is Jeff's girlfriend. But none of that is as important as just the fact that she has somebody there for her if she gets hurt in the shower. I mean, people can slip and fall in the shower and could die, especially if nobody is there to help them or to come in there and call 911. And whatever this medical issue is that's causing that, that might actually happen if she's already in the hospital by the time we get to the end of the story. Making sure that situation is okay is a lot more important than whether Jeff saw anything or not. But let me know how you see this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for giving my coworker a fantasy novel for Secret Santa and trying to broaden her horizons? For Secret Santa, I got Sarah, who put down a bunch of books that she wanted, as well as other things like socks, tea, and candy. I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest, because I really like to shop for people and give really cool gifts, and these were just blah things. When I looked up all the books to get her, I found out they were all romance novels. I felt kind of cringe buying her romance novels, so I looked at the common themes and found a really good fantasy novel to buy her instead called Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. It has romance in it too. I figure if she likes to read, then she'd be happy to broaden her horizons and branch out. I also got her some Baby Yoda socks to go with it because who doesn't like Baby Yoda, and some Bigelow tea that look good. We did the exchange this morning and she looked visibly confused when she opened hers. She changed her face to be surprised and happy, but this really bothered me. In the break room later, I heard her talking and complaining, saying that she didn't get why someone would get her these things. The other person said they probably were upset they got a woman instead of a man, which I thought was rude. I'm a woman too, but I'm just not a pumpkin spice latte and Hallmark kind of woman. Then after, I saw her give the socks to someone else, saying that they could have the socks for their kid. I was honestly really bothered by this. I put thought and effort into a gift. Am I the jerk for getting her something to branch out of her humdrum romance genre and Baby Yoda socks? I thought everyone liked Baby Yoda. So there are a few different ways you can do Secret Santa. Sometimes you just get anything you want for a person based on what you know about them, but other times, like it sounds like this time was, you agree in advance on a theme and then you get gifts from that theme. This was kind of a more specific version of that, where not only is it a theme, but it's a theme for each person, it sounds like. And if that's how they're doing this Secret Santa, then it sounds like he didn't really follow the rules of this Secret Santa. He kind of just said, oh, her taste is boring, it's blah. He called them humdrum romance books and wanted to get her something that he thought that she would like instead. But the thing is, it wasn't really something that he thought she would like. It was something that he wanted her to like, or that he thought was better than what she already does like. And it wasn't like she was not gracious when receiving it. She still pretended like she was happy. But I don't think you can really expect somebody, even in private, to be happy about the thing that they didn't even want in the first place. But maybe you see this totally differently. How would you interpret this whole Secret Santa situation? And let me know, jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for asking my neighbor to move her craft room to a different bedroom? My husband and I live in an upstairs 3-bedroom flat, and the flat below us is the same layout. The house has been for sale for a while, and recently a woman bought it. It turns out she doesn't have any children, so I found it strange that she bought a 3-bedroom house, but soon I found out it's because she runs a craft business from home and needs 2 bedrooms to run it. The problem is, unfortunately, she has decided to use her main bedroom, which is below us, as her main craft room. At first, it was fine as she hadn't fully moved in, but now it is driving me crazy. She is in that room almost all day long, and I can hear her walking about and the faint noise of the machines. I don't spend long in my bedroom during the day, but when I do go in, it just annoys me knowing that she's constantly there. Like, why can't she have picked the smaller bedrooms since she knows the kids are at school all day? She always stops using her embroidery and sewing machines by 7 p.m., but she's told me that she can sit up until 10 p.m. some nights, finishing off orders, which plays on my mind. I go to bed at 9 p.m. and I can't sleep for hours as I lie there listening for her every move. Just knowing that that she's awake and walking about drives me crazy, as I find it so selfish that someone would buy a flat and work from home. My husband says he can barely hear a thing during the day and that I need to calm down. He also doesn't see a big deal about her using her house as she pleases. Yesterday, I finally had enough and I went to her door. I told her how I was feeling about everything and how I can hear the faint noise of her machines. She apologized and invited me inside to show me her setup. All her machines are on some sort of anti-vibration padding to stop as much noise as possible, so she claims the noise should be minimal and that you need to expect some noise from neighbors. I told her I don't make any noise, and that's when things took a turn, as she said she can hear my kids running around and jumping off furniture all evening, but she would never even dream of complaining because it's just one of those things when you share a building with other people. I left before I said anything else that I regretted, and I thought that was the end of it, but today my husband came home from working overnight and asked if I had said anything to the woman downstairs, as she was very cold and blunt with him when he said hello. I told him what happened, and he said that I am the massive jerk. I've spoken to a few of my friends who think I've handled this completely wrong and that I'm a bit of a jerk for it, but I don't know what else could have been done. Am I the jerk? The neighbor here sounds much more reasonable than the OP does. I mean, she's going out of her way to make sure that she only does what she's doing in her own home at very specific hours, never past 7 p.m. She even bought all these anti-vibration things in order to minimize the sound even more, and I'm sure even after this conversation, she probably went to an even greater length to reduce the sound, even though she technically didn't have to. And despite all of that, she doesn't say a word when the OP's kids are running and jumping off furniture every day. It sounds like the OP is demanding some sort of unfair situation where the neighbor must be silent exactly when she wants her to be silent, but because the OP has kids, they can make noise when they want to. The OP says, even though it's very faint, just knowing that she's awake and walking about drives me crazy. It's hard to understand why that would bother her so much, because pretty much anyone living in any shared building is going to hear some sounds from the other units. But let me know how you see this down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A Karen in the neighborhood scams her neighbors and steals from them for years so that she doesn't have to get a job and work. She doesn't care who she steals from, and she doesn't care how much she screams at her neighbors for the little things they do, like leaving their trash out. But this is how she got caught stealing money from her neighbors for all these years. And what happened to her afterward was a lot more serious than you might expect. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This happened years ago, 1985 to be exact. I was 45 years old when this happened, and I'm 81 now. So after my second retirement, I started doing property management. I bought this 2,500 square foot luxury home with the sole intention of renting it out. Now, I didn't know how bad the homeowners association, the HOA, was at the time, but when I became the owner, I soon found out. This all took place in 2 years' time. Karen would literally have a problem with everyone in the neighborhood. Trash cans left out? Fined. Loud music after 10 p.m.? Fined. Yard sale without permission? Fined. Removing dead plants and replanting without approval? You get fined. It went on and on like this. Now, the community could run for the HOA board, but the HOA board chose the president. 6 out of the 10 members on the board liked Karen, so she always kept her job. Her husband was in the medical field, so he made a lot of money. It got to the point where she was called Queen Karen in the neighborhood and dishing out HOA fines. Now, I used to go in person to collect the rent because the people that rented my house were good friends of mine. I did this for months, so I would park my car by the front of the garage. My friends and I would have some music on, but it wasn't even loud, and Queen Karen would come over driving her golf cart and would say,
Excuse me?
Yes?
You have to turn that music down, it's too loud!
I told her that it was 8 p.m. and that music, even loud, can be played until 10 p.m. She wasn't having it and demanded that I do so. Now, my friends and I kept the music going and we were enjoying ourselves. She proceeded to get angry and fined me. Now, most people would just take this and pay the fine, but not me. I went to the HOA board and I contested the fine and I won. From that point on, Queen Karen made it her personal mission to destroy me. She would fuss and complain about every little thing. I fought what I could, but I did end up paying for some of it. She also went after my tenants, which made things worse for me. I had to sit down with one of my friends one night to discuss the problem. When I parked my car, Queen Karen came over in her robe and said that I have to park somewhere else. I did because I didn't want to start anything. We see her go back inside her house and embrace a man that isn't her husband. We were being noisy and came to the conclusion that she was cheating on her husband. And spoiler alert, she was. My friends and I told Queen Queen Karen's husband. I'm sure he did some investigation because 3 months later they were divorced and he was moving his stuff out. Now, gossip said that Queen Karen got nothing because she was the one that cheated and she didn't have a job, so she wasn't entitled to the money. From this point on, Queen Karen had a massive decline in the quality of life that she had. She sold her car and got a cheaper one, and she adopted different dressing habits. But even after the divorce, she still never got a job, and she was still living somewhat better than everyone else. Fast forward to 1986 in February, Queen Karen and the HOA had been giving out fines for very obscure things and increased the monthly dues. Having trash cans out a couple of hours early or after the trash man left would result in a fine. Targeting people that had older or dirty cars, and it goes on and on. Me and the other people in the community were sick of the nonsense that she and the HOA were pulling. So at the next meeting, we made ourselves heard. We voiced our concerns. Queen Karen said that the community had been falling behind on repairs and that dues and increases in fines were necessary, especially if people weren't maintaining their own property. She said that it was in the yearly budget report and that we should have read it. The other pissed off residents and I go read the statement. Before, none of us read it because we take it as junk mail and we just disregard it. But now we read the whole statement cover to cover. The Queen Karen had increased the HOA budget by 15%, and where that extra money was going remained unknown. We went over to her house the next day and demanded to know where the extra money was being spent, but she refused several times. She closed the door and went back to watching TV. We started filing a joint lawsuit to find out where the money was going. In June, we found out. Cue the revenge. Queen Karen was living off of HOA fines and dues. The increase is because she was running out of money. She didn't have a job, so she embezzled from the HOA so she wouldn't have to get a job, and she got busted. We called the police for her embezzling the money. She was charged with fraud and extortion. The neighbors and I filed a joint lawsuit against Karen to get reimbursement as well because she had no money, so she had to mortgage her house to pay us all. She later went to federal prison for 6 years with no parole. Because she went away, no one was paying on her house. The bank foreclosed on it and it was bought by someone else. So when she got out in 1992, she was homeless. Honestly, the majority of us did not want to ruin her life like this. Had she toned down the excessive fines, we would have let her be. But she had to double down and steal from us because she didn't want to get a job like everyone else. So was I the jerk? So obviously it's sad that she had to be homeless after she got out of prison in 1992, but it's hard to feel a ton of sympathy for somebody who's been scamming and stealing from people who in their own lives may have been struggling. I'm sure at least some of those people in the neighborhood were barely getting by, and this lady, this Queen Karen, took advantage of that so that she didn't have to work so she could get free money. We see a few different versions of this quote pop up from time to time in these types of stories, and one of the top responses to this was a version of that quote saying, you can be a jerk and get away with it, or you can be a crook and get away with it. But it's much harder to be a crook and a jerk at the same time and get away with it. And also never break more than one law at a time. One little side note in this is that the OP, the original poster here, says that because she was the one that cheated and she didn't have a job, she wasn't entitled to the money. So he says that Queen Karen got nothing because of that. But it sounds like she ended up with the house despite being the one who cheated in the situation and that ruling in the ex-husband's favor, because she wouldn't have a house to lose if she didn't have a house after the divorce. So if you had a house and you had an HOA that was scamming you like this over a long period of time and you found out that you had paid them thousands of dollars over the years, how would you handle it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my husband's mom nap in my room? My husband's mom moved in with us a week ago. The minute we were informed she was going to move in temporarily until our house gets renovated, we've emptied out a room specifically for her. It has everything: a bed with a frame, curtains, mounted TV, wardrobe, etc. She was thrilled with it and loved it a lot. One day I came home and found her in my bedroom, sleeping in my husband's bed. I was confused, but she told me she took a nap on the bed and lost track of time. Since then, she started talking about how she loved the nap there and started hinting that she wants to take naps in the bedroom from now on. I kept ignoring her comments until my husband sat me down and told me that his mom really liked it and got used to napping in our bedroom, and we should just let her have her daily afternoon nap in the room. I said absolutely not, and we started debating. I told him his mom is being ridiculous because she has a whole room upstairs where she could nap. He got upset and said that I was making his mom feel uncomfortable and unwelcome with this attitude. I said no and refused to negotiate. He called me selfish and mean for saying no and preventing his mom from feeling more comfortable at his house. But I reminded him that I pay full mortgage for the house while he blows his money on gadgets and consoles. He accused accused me of bringing up old disagreements in this current conflict to use against him. I said no again, and that he should stop pushing because I need the room for when I get home and I feel exhausted from working on my feet since 6 a.m. He's refusing to speak to me until I agree and let his mom have her nap in there. Am I the jerk for choosing this hill to die on? Am I being difficult? Is the bed or the environment really that much better in this room? Maybe the solution is getting a better bed for the mom in the other room. If the OP and her husband have some sort of crazy Tempur-Pedic foam-fitting bed or something, maybe that's what the mom should say instead of just going in there and sleeping on it. But there's no reason given as to why she wants to use the same bed that her son and his wife use, which is pretty strange. It definitely doesn't seem productive to go into the whole "this is my house, this is your house, I pay for this, you pay for that" conversation, because that just devolves into nothing actually getting solved. It's usually just a distraction to whatever the core issue is here. But if this was your partner's mom and she kept wanting to sleep in your bed while you were at work and then you came home and you couldn't use your own bed, how would you act? Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for correcting a coworker that chocolate milk does not come from brown cows and potentially losing my job over this? I can't believe I have to write this, but I don't know whether or not I'm actually this insensitive during this time and age or if this is an extreme overreaction. But I'm gonna let you guys decide because I'm going to assume that you guys are more emotionally savvy about this topic. So here we go. About 2 weeks ago, me and another coworker were talking about the topic of chocolate milk. And well, she is one of the 10% of Americans that actually believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. Correction, apparently it's 7.4% of Americans believe that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. I admit that I goffed a bit, to which she took some offense to, but I ended up apologizing and telling her that I thought she was being a bit silly and told her that chocolate milk is actually just regular milk with chocolate syrup, to which she got defensive and said that she didn't believe me. So I asked her if I can show her proof that she was wrong, and she dared me to do so. So I bought regular milk and chocolate syrup from a nearby store during my lunch. I mixed it up and gave it to her to drink. She ended up drinking it and just left in a huff. Apparently, she just told our shift manager she was leaving for the day because she felt attacked by me and demanded that she needed a mental day, to which the shift manager didn't approve of, but she left anyway. So whatever. Apparently this whole thing got everyone else's attention because my coworker made such a big scene about it that it apparently attracted the attention of my store manager, who had to personally call me to his office yesterday and tell me about what happened that day. I didn't know at the time, but I really offended that poor coworker of mine so much that she even told my store manager about how she couldn't work with me anymore, and that she even reported me to human resources for, quote, discriminating against her beliefs, and that apparently I caused enough mental damage that she couldn't even go back to work due to how much I humiliated her over chocolate milk. My store manager even wrote me up and warned me that the next time I acted in such an offensive manner, I would be fired. I mean, I'm already quitting and starting a new job anyway, but I'm worried about whether or not I'm actually the jerk for this and if I should be more careful at my next job. So, am I the jerk? Somehow, I don't know if I believe that 7.4% of Americans think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. If this is true, people think that cows produce a chocolatey flavor? That can't be true. So if this coworker is one of these people that thinks that chocolate milk comes from brown cows, I don't exactly see how showing her that chocolate milk can be made in another way would disprove that it didn't also come from brown cows, but apparently that was enough evidence that she needed to leave, demand that she not work with the OP anymore, and take a day for her mental damage, and to get away from the person that was, quote, discriminating against her beliefs. It's probably a lot more likely that this coworker doesn't care about chocolate milk at all and just wants to take a day off of work, I'm guessing, unless she's in some sort of chocolate milk religion or something. But let me know how you would handle the situation down below, and is the OP the jerk or not for shattering her coworker's reality about where chocolate milk comes from? Am I the jerk for banning a player from our LARP for drama? I'll spare a lot of details since not everybody is familiar with LARPs, live action role playing. We run a game that meets quite often for several years. 2 months ago, a player I'll call Steph joined, and her conflict is with a veteran player I'll call Tony. Tony befriended Steph out of the game, taught her more about our LARP, and offered to help her get settled. This lasted about 2 weeks, and their in-game characters spent a lot of time together, acting as friends in-game. Tony's character invited Steph to go to a secluded place and then proceeded to, along with a character played by one of our moderators, murder her character with no warning aside from the mandatory signals according to our rules, citing an in-game character grudge as the reason for the kill. He then justifies his actions out of game and explained that getting close to her in-game was for that plan. Since we run permadeath rules, Steph lost all of her progress and has to start fresh on a new character, a new gear, and new new in-game relationships. Our rules allow for this PvP, player versus player action, and the entire staff backed up Tony and Ralph's actions, as they followed our rules regarding player kills, and our moderators who play characters are bound to the same rules. Steph, however, was furious because the culture at our LARP has not been 100% competitive. There are sort of unwritten rules, as there has been no PvP kills before, that were not either consented to out of game or clearly signaled in advance, i.e. characters receiving death threat letters, players PvPing a known murderer and losing, and Steph just hated that this was sprung on her with no opportunity for her to be able to avoid it. She then left and texted the other players who she was friends with that she was leaving and complained about Tony's behavior and what had happened. Immersion is very important to our group, and we avoid talking about in-game information out of game. And Steph was doing so by telling multiple people that her character had been murdered, by whom, where, and how, which is against our rules. She did have valid concerns, however, and so the staff team asked Steph to not contact any more of our players regarding the issue while we discuss what to do first. We also didn't want this to blow out into a big community fight, as we've lost many players over the years due to issues similar to this. The team then found out that Steph continued to vent to other players that were her out-of-game friends about the issue. Our organizers team saw this as disrespectful to our event's rules and the entire community for continuing to break our rules even when asked to stop. We banned her from coming back to our events, and to prevent drama, let the rumor that she simply left stay in place. Now she's texted everyone whose contact deal she has about what's happened, and a few more players have been asking us why she was banned. So, am I the jerk for banning a player from our LARP because of drama? The world of LARPing seems like it's a whole other planet in terms of RPGs, and there's actually a little bit of insight given by somebody in response saying that LARP groups, especially Vampire the Masquerade, apparently sometimes develop cult-like power dynamics where new players are mistreated in favor of the group's golden children and narcissists. This veteran character promised the newbie out of game that he would be her friend and show her the ropes. In my opinion, that's using an out-of-character connection to gain in-character trust, and by OP's logic, he should also be banned for this meta nonsense. That's actually the very first thing I thought of when I saw this, because even though I've never LARPed before, I have played quite a bit of GTA RP, and in most GTA RP servers, you cannot metagame, power game, do random deathmatch, RDM, and what happened in this situation definitely falls under the category of metagaming, because he's using outside information to influence what's happening in-game. One of the most popular servers defines metagaming as purposely using or relaying information which your character did not learn in-game. That can be anything from talking to the person in real life, Twitch chats, Discord channels, in order to shape game roleplay. For example, using what you've learned from other streams and chats or players to make large leaps in speculation to end up knowing how things work. And in this case, it's kind of the opposite, but the same logic applies. The mod was giving her information and then went into the game and used that against her to ultimately set her up so that she was vulnerable and didn't have any defenses and then could be taken down. So this definitely seems hypocritical on the part of this LARPing group and the decisions that they made in order to ban this person, when it obviously seems like they're doing the exact same thing, just in a slightly different way. But whether or not you know anything about role-playing games, let me know how you see the situation, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for telling my in-laws about what their son's girlfriend did to my son's blanket? I'm a 33-year-old female, and I found out that my ex-husband, who's 37, was cheating on me when I was 7 months pregnant with our son. I got a divorce and we share custody of our 3-year-old son. My ex-husband's girlfriend tried to get involved in my parenting several times. She even commented on my son's name, implying that we should agree on a name we all want and not just what I wanted, and tried to dictate what he should and shouldn't have. As a result, she started throwing stuff away of his that I paid for myself. Honestly, it's frustrating that I'm barely getting by with the money I have and I cannot afford to buy replacements for all of the stuff that she has thrown away. But my ex-husband says that it's her house and she gets to decide what can and can't enter. I made a crochet blanket for my son with his name on it. This blanket is special to me, and the tools that I used to be able to make it cost me money, not to mention the time and effort that it took to make it. I sent my son to stay with his dad a few days ago and he wanted to take the blanket with him to sleep. I don't know exactly what happened, but when I came to pick him up, he told me that his dad's girlfriend took the blanket away from him and threw it out, leaving him with no blanket to sleep with at night as punishment for him not accepting the one that she offered. I was furious. I called his dad, but he hung up on me. I sent him a text explaining the situation, but he texted back telling me that I should stop the drama and find a job if I have so much free time on my hands, instead of picking on his girlfriend. girlfriend. I felt frustrated. I visited his family, who are good to me, and told them about what their son's girlfriend did. Now, it's worth mentioning that she's been working hard for their approval and trying to get on their good side. They were shocked to know what she did. They all flipped out on her and started calling her out. My sister-in-law took it further by putting this on social media, which made other family members see what she did. My ex-husband called me yelling about my pathetic attempt to turn his family against his girlfriend, and I could hear her freaking out in the background while lashing out, saying that I ruined every chance she had to have a good relationship with her future in-laws. I hung up and felt absolutely horrible, even though I was just venting to his family about what happened and I felt frustrated. Maybe I shouldn't have told them. I'm not sure anymore, since the whole family isn't speaking to her, since that might have had a lasting impact on their relationship with her. So am I the jerk? Okay, so first off, the outcome to her actions is not on the OP. The far more important part to this whole thing is the effect that it's having on this little kid. He's 3 years old and he just wants a blanket that he knows is from his mom. And this lady throws away a handmade blanket that he obviously has an emotional attachment to as punishment. That's all you need to know. Whatever comes as the consequence of that to her and her relationship with her future in-laws, referring to the girlfriend, is all on her. The OP's number one priority is to protect the mental state and development of her tiny child, who's only 3 years old. So she shouldn't feel bad about protecting her son, no matter what the cost is to the girlfriend. A teaching consultant, Karen, gets hired at a school and then doesn't show up to work for weeks. She no call, no shows, but then gets her lawyer husband to sue the school to get paid for all those weeks that she never went to work in the most vindictive, malicious way possible. She wins the battle, but loses the war and ruins her life, both professionally and personally. Here's how it happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This story starts with Mrs. P, the principal, because that's what she is. Mrs. P started as a special needs caretaker, where she had to study through years of work and graduated with a doctorate in special education. After 20 years of this experience, she was asked by the council of a medium-sized city to open and run a new special needs school in the city. She accepted the offer, and after 4 years, she had a school with 150 kids in it. For a special education school, that is a huge number. Such schools need way more people to work there than regular schools, not just teachers, but also other caretakers, and the job isn't always clean and easy. So naturally, Mrs. P was always looking to hire. Then comes Karen. Karen just finished her college, got a degree in education and consulting at the top of her class. Her professor was on Mrs. P's school board, and she recommended her with very warm words. Karen was basically hired before she even sent in her resume. Karen is married to Kevin, of course, who finished his law studies in the top 5 of his class and now is doing an internship in a big law firm, awaiting his license to practice law. Basically, their future is laid bright and clear, and all they have to do is not mess it up on a path to a nice, rich life. Mrs. P accepted Karen to work in the school and announced that she will start her work on August 20th, about a week before the school year starts, as the staff needs to organize the school for the opening of the school year. Karen protests that she is a consultant, not another lowlife that comes to mop the floor. Mrs. P is pissed by this attitude, but Karen is at the top of her class and is supposedly the best in the field. So she just smiles and says, "Staff work starts on August 20th. You are staff too, so be here on that date." Karen is not happy, but that's life. The pre-opening week, the school staff will never forget. While teachers and nurses and other members were all working together to get the school in shape, including painting the walls, setting up the equipment, and other chores that you don't learn in college, Karen fixed her own room, sat in it all day, and played with her phone. Needless to say, she was not very popular among school staff. But time went on, school opened on time, and things started to get in their regular routine. Karen was causing more and more issues. She refused to fill in regular reports about her activities. She was not available to meetings with staff and parents, and all in all, she was a total entitled Karen. Mrs. P tried to talk to her again and again to no avail. Eventually, Mrs. P asked the professor, the one who gave Karen her degree, the one who was on the school's board, to sit with Karen daily and coach her on how to actually work and function in a rural school environment, as apparently she didn't learn that in college. But even that didn't help. Karen was hated by all of the school staff, and the care to the children was getting worse every day, until eventually a parent filed child to complain about the poor treatment his children got, and the board became aware of the issues. A meeting was set with the board, Mrs. P and Karen. The professor promised Karen that if she set order to her paperwork and acted respectfully, everything would be alright. Karen knew she was on the hook now, but just couldn't stop being a Karen. So the day of the meeting comes and Karen is a no-show, no-call. She just didn't come to work that day, and the day after, and the week after. Without Karen, the board can only hear what Mrs. P has to say, but they already know it, so the meeting is delayed to a time when Karen will show up. Needless to say, this does not help her case at all. Anyway, Mrs. P and the professor tried to get Karen on the phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Eventually, Mrs. P had no choice. Karen is a no-show, no-call for over a week. She has to have a really good explanation to not get fired now. She calls Karen and leaves a message on her voicemail that she hadn't heard from her in over a week, that she is very worried, and to please contact them ASAP, as finance wants to cut her pay. Finally, Karen called in. She had been sick the whole time. She will return to work in 2 days. Good. Mrs. P marked the date and then set a meeting with the professor and Karen first thing in the morning. If Karen is sick and has a doctor's note, she will not be fired, but she will get some strong talking to about the no-call issue. The day comes, Mrs. P and the professor sit in her office waiting for Karen to come, and she didn't come. Mrs. P tried to call her and got the voicemail again. She is pissed. The professor is pissed too, and Karen has set a new record in pissing off and wasting everyone's time. Eventually, Karen does show up, but she's 2 hours late, and Mrs. P calls her into a meeting immediately. Before anything else, she calls the professor to come. The professor canceled other plans she had to come in, and the meeting finally starts 3 hours late. Thankfully, Karen had a doctor's note. She is okay when it comes to that, but she's gonna get the strong talking to now. About 10 minutes into the meeting, Karen bursts into tears. The meeting stopped to cool things down, but it's not over yet. After a few minutes, everyone comes back into the room and Karen opens with,
I'm still not okay. I still feel sick and I want to go home now.
Mrs. P is silent, and the professor made a comment saying, I just don't even understand. As a board member, I must say, as long as you are sick, your job is safe. But it is your first year. You may not have saved anything in sick days or vacation days. You will not be paid for this. Karen just said,
We'll see about that.
She collected her things and then left. She is sick for another 2 weeks and her position is vacant. Mrs. P does what she can to fill the void, as do others, but it is clear that a man is missing and the position needs to be filled. Eventually, Mrs. P calls Karen again to ask how she is and when she will be back. At that time, Karen says she can't handle the pressure and wants to quit. Mrs. P is stunned by this. Karen is only in her first year. Quitting in the middle will risk her future, and finding another consultant in the middle of the school year is almost impossible. But she kept her thoughts to herself and just said she doesn't think it's necessary or wise to do what she's saying. Just feel better and come back after. But Karen doesn't come back. After 2 more weeks of absence, her husband called in to ask why no money was being paid. He gets the obvious answer. Karen has no right to be paid sick leave, and he gets angry and he promises to check his options, which in lawyer terms means, I want to sue you. Now it's clear that the bridge was burned and Karen will not be back. Mrs. P started looking for a replacement, and the options aren't great. Eventually, she convinced a retired consultant to come back from retirement just to save this year. The replacement starts working, but can't get paid. The position is still officially occupied by Karen, who is still on sick leave. Board members are now calling Karen, as it's clear she will not talk to Mrs. P. They ask her to come back, and when she refuses, they ask her to submit a resignation to allow them to keep the school running. Karen claims that she is ready to come back, but only if she will be paid for all of her sick leave. But nobody's willing to pay that. The mess is growing bigger and bigger. The parents start to hear rumors, and all over, the climate is not very good. Until finally, Kevin, Karen's husband, calls in and says that he wants to sue the school for the payment. He gets to talk to the city lawyers that explain to him that Karen cannot sue the school or the city while she is still sick or still registered as an employee. She has to stop one of these conditions. The day after, Karen is at the school with a standard resignation letter stating that her mental and health issues caused by the toxic environment is the reason that she's quitting. finally, after more than 2 months, the position is clear and filled right away. What was just rumors by now has become fact. Parents are aware that something went on. Finally, in a group chat of parents with Mrs. P, they ask her what was this all about. Mrs. P replies that Karen has resigned due to her mental issues. Kevin did try to sue the city and it went to mediation before the court hearing. The mediator saw the material and strongly advised Karen to withdraw. Kevin listened and the whole thing was forgotten for a while. 3 months passed. School was doing okay when an email from Karen landed in Mrs. P's inbox. In a short, dry legal language, Karen informed Mrs. P that she knows she was slandering her in public. She has screenshots as evidence that she claims she has mental issues, and that is not at all true. Karen demands Mrs. P to apologize in public and clarify that Karen did not have any mental issues and her resignation was due to professional disputes. Mrs. P was shocked. She knew for a fact that Karen was, let's just say, not 100% okay up there, and she had her resignation letter to prove it. Going this way from Karen was beyond stupid. Mrs. P did the right thing and sent the letter to the school board, asking them what they think should be done. The school board just heard the words legal action and freaked out. They didn't want any of this. They demanded Mrs. P to just apologize and let it all go, but Mrs. P was not willing to admit wrongdoing of anything, as she knew she did everything right. The board kept this option, claiming Mrs. P was being pointlessly stubborn and they will not cover any legal matters in that issue, which was against Mrs. P's contract. All legal liability that she had was within her work and should be covered by her employer. That meant her job was on the line now and Mrs. P was determined to fight back and win. But without the city's resources, fighting a slander lawsuit is expensive, and with her job at risk, it would not be easy. Mrs. P again went to the parents' forum and let them know that she had some personal legal issues and asked if they knew anyone that could help. One of the parents, a lawyer, agreed to help her without pay. Note that it is highly unprofessional to ask parents to help in personal issues, but this wasn't really a personal issue, it was a school issue, and that this parent lawyer noted that after he was informed of all the details. The lawyer agreed that Karen and Kevin had no ground for their suit, but said that if they sent the email, their intention is to sue anyway, and nothing Mrs. P would do will stop them. So it was better if Mrs. P just ignored it and let them dig their own grave. And digging they dug. A week after the first letter, a new letter arrived by regular mail in an envelope. It was printed on Kevin's law firm letterhead, stating that the matter should be resolved by public apology or they will sue. Even the lawyer did not believe someone in a large prestigious firm is that dumb. But here is the letter to prove it. A trial will take time and cost money, even if he's doing it for free. Not to mention that Mrs. P would be fired no matter the result. They had to find another solution. The lawyer figured out that stupid people need a stupid solution. He thought about it for a while and then remembered that he had a classmate in college who went to go work for that firm. He called that classmate and asked him how he is, now that they are both well after their college years. Apparently his classmate worked hard and got to become a junior partner in the firm. When the lawyer mentioned this case, his friend was surprised. He hadn't heard about this case like he should have, as lawyers in large firms gossip like old women, and a slander suit against special education of a school, that would be the most raunchy gossip in town, but also a PR nightmare. He and other parents would never take a case like that. It would make them look like greedy lawyers who would skin off anyone for a penny. Not good publicity. He promised to look around and check what was going on in the firm. It didn't take him long. The next day, he called the lawyer back. He found out that no lawyer in the firm was aware of the case. He figured Kevin used the firm's paper to send the letter, but no lawyer above him was involved. Good news for our lawyer. Together, they planned the right answer to Kevin and Karen. The answer that would shut them down for good. The lawyer called Mrs. P and told her his plan. It was easy, simple, and malicious. She didn't like it, but she agreed to it as it was the best and fastest way to resolve the situation. The next thing the lawyer drafted was his settlement agreement. He called Kevin and asked him if it will do. The agreement stated that Mrs. P will apologize to Karen in the most public way she can and will post all the legally related papers alongside the apology in the school website. The agreement stated that the apology can come in any form as long as it can be searched in Google and has a link from the school webpage. It also stated that after the apology, Karen and Kevin will not be able to sue the school ever again, and they will have no further demands from Mrs. P or the school ever again. The last clause stated that if any unrelated issues come of this agreement, Karen and Kevin will be liable for any consequences and the school can demand any losses it suffers from them. Kevin agreed to all of the terms. Within 2 hours, Karen and Kevin signed the agreement and the stage was set, ready to launch. The lawyer came to Mrs. P's office with the equipment he needed and the apology transcript. He set up a video camera and Mrs. P read her apology. She opened with an introduction, who Mrs. P is, what she had done so far in her career, her degrees, and recommendations. She also made an introduction to Karen, her career so far, her degree, and recommendations. None so far. bar. And after the introduction, she explained that Karen claims that she left the school in the middle of the school year because of, quote, a professional disagreement, and any other comments Miss P or any others have claimed about Karen's health and mental issues are false, and Mrs. P is sorry if Karen or anybody else heard so, and if Karen's feelings were hurt. In essence, anyone who sees the video understands exactly who Karen is, and even if Mrs. P didn't say it in words, it was clear that she thought very bad things about Karen. Right after it was finished, the video was uploaded to the school's YouTube channel, and a subsite under the school's website was created showing the video and all of the related documents, including the threatening letter that Kevin sent in his firm paper. A link was sent to Kevin with the short line, "That settles the matter. Don't contact us ever again." Karen and Kevin had won the battle. But obviously, that wasn't the end of it. This is when the revenge plan went into effect. A month passed, and Kevin suddenly got fired from his firm. Apparently, he wasn't in a position to send a letter threatening a lawsuit using the firm's letterhead without any higher-up lawyer watching him. Sending it like that for a case that he managed himself was plain fraud. He was reported to the bar, but to not let a scandal and a public relations disaster come out, he was just let go, and no further punishment was taken. The firm sent a letter to the school admitting the fraud and asking the school to remove the threatening letter Kevin sent. The school graciously agreed, and Kevin's letter was removed, but the firm letter admitting Kevin's fraud was published instead. Kevin was done in the business. Any lawyer who came to look for a job asked him why he left the big firm before he even got past the first stage, and a simple search of his name showed that he committed fraud against a special education school of all places. Nobody would hire him. Meanwhile, Karen kept looking for a job in her field. She had to wait until a new school year began. Her college professor was not willing to write her any recommendations, and she had to explain the missing year in her resume to any principal. A few school principals heard that she worked with Mrs. P and called her to ask about Karen, which Mrs. P only said that due to legal issues, she can't talk about Karen, and it is all explained in the legal section of the school's website. That was enough. Any principal who knows that Karen sued her former school would not dare to hire her. Karen lost that school year, and she had to support herself and began looking for other jobs. She found a job as a secretary in an office that didn't Google search her name and worked there for a couple of months until the manager got bored one day and decided to search up Karen's name. She was fired the next day for a minor screw up. It's been more than 5 years since this happened. Kevin is a lawyer in a sleazy firm hired mostly by low-life criminals. He loses most of his cases and is known as the low-life lawyer for the low-life criminals. Karen is still looking for a job. She can't hold a job for more than 6 months until she gets fired for petty things. They both know very well why they're doing so poorly in life. Karen sent another threatening letter demanding to remove all mentions of his name and Karen's name from the school website. He also asked to remove the video. The lawyer just told him that it is what we agreed on, and if he wants to renegotiate, he will demand Kevin to pay for damages. He didn't specify what damages, and Kevin didn't ask. He gave up. Karen and Kevin admitted defeat. They lost the war. Mrs. P eventually removed the video from the school site and set it as a private video on YouTube, but all the legal letters are still posted there and will be posted there until, well, maybe forever. The plan that the lawyer came up with here was a lot more clever than I thought it was going to turn out to be. It truly was a situation where they purposely lost the battle in order to win the war. When the original poster here said that Mrs. P was kind of resistant to doing this plan, I wondered why at first, but then obviously it's because she would have had to have made this apology video, but that was all part of the plan where ultimately it would put everything into motion. It all boiled down to the fact that they knew that once this was posted on their website, like Kevin wanted them to have, and his firm found out, that they would have to let him go for fraud, and then they would use that letter admitting that he had been involved with fraud, replace all the apology stuff that was on the website. Clever, clever. This is one of the more big brain plays we've seen so far in all of the revenge stories, because really it's so subtle. Kevin probably couldn't have easily predicted that was what was going to happen unless he happened to know that the lawyer representing Mrs. P knew one of his colleagues from back when they were in school. So he probably thought he had this whole thing locked down. And when it comes to the Karen herself, she was trying to be in a situation like in Fight Club, if you guys have ever seen that, where she wants to keep getting paid but doesn't want to show up. The OP never said what country this all took place in, but in most places, if you just no call, no show for that long, you're pretty much already fired. You don't have to do paperwork to prove that you're fired. But maybe it has something to do with this specific industry, or that it has to do with the school. The OP does say that English is not their first language, so I'm guessing it's not in an English-speaking country. So anyway, let me know how you would handle this situation. Could you have even thought of a better solution? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. A power-hungry angry Karen tries to get me fired, but it ends up all backfiring and she is the one who gets fired. And when that happens, she tries to sue for discrimination, which failed epically. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. A few years ago, I started working for a heavy industrial manufacturing company. I lucked out and got a great supervisor for my boss, Joe. The work was hard, working 12-hour days for 13 days in a row and then a Sunday off and then back for another 13 days. I was young and I didn't mind. It helped my wife and I save up for a house. After about 6 months, Joe noticed I was picking up on the work pretty fast and promoted me to a group leader position. This came with a raise and increased responsibility that most other workers didn't want. Joe put me in troubled groups in his department and I would work on general improvements and figuring out the issues. This was a union shop and the mentality was to just put in your hours. Don't work harder or smarter, just do your time and don't kill the job. That was the unspoken motto. After a few years, Joe was promoted to manager and he transferred me with him to his departments. While I wasn't a supervisor yet, I was the supervisor in all but name. The supervisors loved it because they never had to leave the office and I liked it because it was a good learning experience. I made a good reputation and got a lot of respect from workers and from management. Eventually, Joe's areas were doing so well that he was promoted to plant manager. As before, he wanted to promote me with him, this time to a supervisor spot. We talked at length because the only supervisor spot open was working for Karen. Karen was female, a minority, and a member of the LGBTQ community. She was the poster child on the company website of the inclusiveness in the workplace. Literally, her face was the one that they used. She was also a freshly minted manager, and Joe was not confident in her abilities. But me, being the plucky go-getter with a can-do attitude, decided to take the position. I had to interview with Karen and got to meet some of her supervisors. They were very quiet and reserved. Once I was promoted, I worked in tandem with another supervisor, Chris. Chris was young. He had one small child and his wife was pregnant and a stay-at-home mom. During the first week, everything was going well. I was learning all the employees, getting to know the process, and getting my feeling for the area. During the second week, Chris's wife went into labor and she had a hard time. Chris went on paternity leave for 6 weeks and I was tossed into the deep and in charge of the whole area solo with 60 employees. I was barely treading water, but I was doing my best. When I would ask Karen for her guidance or assistance, she would scoff like it was beneath her and tell me,
"If I have to do your job, then I don't need you."
So I gritted my teeth and worked my tail off. My wife got me a smartwatch and I was averaging 25,000 steps a day trying to keep everything running. We were holding our own and employees all did what they could to help as the situation was not ideal for everyone. A few weeks in, I was reviewing some quality documents and I noticed that one of the quality gates was not being followed. I emailed the information to the quality engineers and they lost their minds. This was a 4-hour operation on a 20-hour part that we were skipping entirely. It turns out one of the reasons Karen got promoted was because she was running her department so efficiently. Then it came to light that she made the decision to skip this quality process, saving that 20% off the time. Except the engineers never signed off on this and it caused massive damage control. The process had to be reinstated and the parts that were never checked had to have warranty extensions. This caused the company to have egg on their face and Karen to look bad. During this time, Karen also became more vindictive. She would openly tell people that she would never be fired and could do what she wanted. She would walk the departments and if she didn't like someone, she would make the supervisors write them up by the end of the day. She wanted us to find a reason and if we didn't, she would take it out on the supervisors. For example, forcing the supervisors to stay late to do inventory or something else menial just because she could. She would not let the supervisors make any decisions until she approved it. So something like overtime had to wait for her approval and she would not respond until the end of day, causing the departments to scramble. Then, if there weren't enough overtime employees to do the work, she would blame it on the supervisors. While the supervisors knew this wasn't right, we all needed our jobs and tried to do the best we could for Karen and the employees. We were mainly rodeo clowns to Karen being the bull. The first day Chris was back, him and I were both pulled into Karen's office. She started berating me on how poor of a job I was doing, making her look bad and how I never came to her for help. This made me speechless because of the previous comments she made and the fact that Supervisor work was beneath her. After the meeting, I was still a bit stunned, but I put it together that she was about to railroad me out of the company, and this was the very first step. I called Joe and asked for a meeting that same day. When I got together with Joe, I started telling him about the things that were going on, and he had no idea. The harassment, the vindictive nature, everything. Ironically, while I was speaking with him, another supervisor called him to complain about Karen as well with the same grievances. Joe was stunned and said that he would speak with Karen, but he gave me a carte blanche on any open spot in the company starting the next day. He really didn't want to lose me. So I did a lateral transfer to a different department doing engineering and IT work, and I thought that was the end of it. A few weeks later, I was leaving work and Karen mentioned that I never turned in my laptop and phone to her. I told her I didn't know I had to, but I could give it to her tomorrow. She smirked and said that she would get it back soon enough. I didn't think too much of it at the time, but after about 6 months, I had my review with my boss Jake. The review went great. He was very happy with my work and was a bit surprised at how fast I picked things up. At the end of the meeting, Jake mentioned offhand how Karen tried to intervene in the review and get me fired, but Joe stepped in and squashed it. Okay, Karen, now you pissed me off. After I left Karen's department, the turnover rate went up through the roof. The supervisors were quitting at a rate of 1 every 3 months. Keep in mind that this is a legacy company that had multi-generations working. Fathers, sons, mothers, entire families. Some areas had 3 generations working side by side, and yet Karen was rolling over employees and supervisors like a steamroller. Working for her became the kiss of death. I casually mentioned to Joe about the turnover, and he told me he couldn't figure out what was going on. People were quitting without notice, and no one was doing exit interviews. I told Joe that Karen was writing people up to force them out. When they would hand her the resignation letter or 2 weeks notice, she would tell them to leave immediately and then throw away the letter. Then she would tell HR that the person quit right on the spot and that was the end of it. Joel told me that because of who she was and how high she was, the company wouldn't do anything to her until they had an airtight case. So I went to work. I took the supervisors working for Karen out drinking after work a few times each week and made sure I had my hand on the pulse. If someone was quitting, I made sure they emailed their letter of resignation to Karen and CC'd Joe and Human Resources, stayed for their exit interview, and that they called the company integrity hotline for good measure. Things were progressing well, and I had all the supervisors on board except for Chris. Chris really needed the job and Karen was not writing him up. Through a stroke of luck, I found out Karen was lowballing his raises as a cost-saving measure. That's why she was not harassing him. When I told Chris, he was furious and wanted to quit on the spot. I encouraged him to speak with Joe before he leaves. Joe and Chris had a very productive meeting and Chris decided to stay. Now, all the supervisors were on board. Joe brought in an HR bigwig from the headquarters in Kansas, and over the course of a week, each supervisor was sent in for an interview discreetly without Karen noticing. By the time the interviews were over, they had emails, texts, eyewitnesses, and a mountain of evidence. This next part I heard from other people, Human Resources, Joe, etc. Despite everything, the company wanted to keep this quiet. So they brought in Karen and said that they no longer needed her and offered a very generous severance package. Karen, being Karen, lost it on the HR people and threatened to sue for discrimination and even called a lawyer. That's when the company pulled out the stack of evidence and rescinded the severance offer. After a few months, Karen found a new job as a plant manager in a different factory, and I found out where. I casually mentioned to the union reps at my factory where Karen was working and suggested that maybe they should give the union at the other factory a call. She was fired within 3 months for employee harassment. The last I heard, she had to sell her house and move out of state to find a job. Am I the jerk for getting revenge on Karen? So if she didn't threaten to sue them, they were prepared to give her this generous severance package. But it's almost like they knew for a fact that she would try to sue them, or at least threaten to sue them there, which is probably why they were so confident in offering her this severance package. The most wild part of this entire story leading up to the end was the fact that the company rewarded her, praised her for being so efficient, only to ultimately find out that she was just cutting out all the safety precautions, the quality assurance step or whatever they called it. How did nobody notice that until the OP found it? They gave her all this praise, but they weren't interested in her method for being so efficient. They just accepted it at face value. That seems really strange, but maybe they just figured nobody would ever skip the quality assurance phase of the operation. It was just too out there to even consider that somebody would do that, and yet she did it. Apparently, warranty extensions in this industry are not cheap, and because they weren't able to do anything besides get the warranty extensions, it probably cost the company quite a bit of money. Some people were wondering, of course, why didn't she get fired right when that was discovered? Well, the original poster here said that they wanted it to be airtight, and maybe that wasn't airtight enough, because if she could prove it wasn't intentional or that it was an accident or she didn't understand how the system worked enough, maybe she could avoid getting fired because of that. But let me know if you've ever had a work experience with somebody like this down below, and what would you do if you're in the situation? Jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for scaring my sister-in-law with a cardboard cutout of The Rock? I'm a 32-year-old female, and my sister-in-law, who's 43, is super nosy. It's come up before, but she's one of those people that will just deny something to the death, no matter how much proof you have, and then get angry at you for not believing her. At my house, the guest bathroom is partially shared with the master bedroom. The toilet and sink are separate for guests. Then through a door, you can get to the shower, our closets, and another sink. Then through an additional door is the bedroom, if that makes any sense. Basically, you can get into our bedroom through the bathroom without going through the main door of the bedroom. So when she comes over, she would sometimes just take a bit too long in the bathroom. During maybe the third or fourth time, I happened to be walking by the bathroom and I heard 2 doors close. I asked her if she was looking for something in the bedroom and if I could help her find it. She replied with,
"No, why would I go into your bedroom?"
and then changed the subject. The next time she was going to come over, I said something small behind the bedroom door so I could see if it had been opened by the small item being pushed back. Later, I could see that it had been. So for me, it confirmed that she had been snooping again. I asked directly if she'd been in our bedroom, and she said something like,
"I don't care what's in your bedroom, get over yourself."
So yesterday, my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law came over, but before that, I ordered a full-size cutout of Dwayne Johnson, which I placed in our bedroom facing the bathroom door. About an hour into the visit, she heads into the bathroom. Very shortly after, there's a scream, a thud, and then a door slam. She came out angry. She'd been quite startled and slammed her upper arm into the door frame while turning away from the cutout. My brother-in-law made it worse by asking, "Well, why were you in their bedroom?" But she didn't answer. And then they left. She's posted on Facebook that she has a big bruise on her arm as a result of my nasty prank. People are saying that she could have been hurt worse and that she's too old to be the victim of a childish prank. I feel bad that she was hurt. It wasn't my intention, but I might be the jerk because I still think that it was hilarious. So, am I the jerk? This actually is pretty hilarious. It makes me wonder what she was trying to find in that bedroom, or maybe she didn't want to find anything at all. She could just be somebody who likes to just look around, but having this direct doorway into the bedroom was too much of a temptation to resist. If the sister-in-law just continuously lies about stuff like this, I feel like you might not have any other choice other than to put a lock on that door that you can only access from the side of the bedroom. I mean, how else would you handle that situation without having her go on Facebook and turning the situation on you so that you are the bad guy? But it's hard to imagine anyone coming up with a better way to handle this than the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson cardboard cutout. So let me know if you have a better idea of how you would handle this, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for a poopy situation? I recently moved into a property that backs up to an HOA, a homeowners association neighborhood. My yard is adjacent to about 4 of theirs. I am not a part of the HOA. The road to my house is a small private road and runs parallel to their private road. So when I first moved in, the county told me my trash pickup location was on their road. Mine's not a good spot for a trash truck to turn around. After about 2 pickups, I find a note on my trash can with the usual HOA BS. They say I can't leave my can on their road, etc., etc. Whatever. I take it to the end of my road and that works fine. Next, I try and get hooked up with gas because electric heating is expensive. The nearest gas line runs down their road. The utility company is cool with it, but they block the construction. Fine. I install a tank and shortly thereafter get another note on my door saying that the noise from the installation was disturbing and the tank is an eyesore. It's a buried tank. You can't even see the cap from the HOA properties. That was that for around 6 months, except for a few complaints about me mowing my lawn outside of the HOA designated mowing hours, but within county hours, until a flatbed with a backhoe backs into my driveway. I walk out to see what's going on, and apparently the sewer connection for the HOA runs under my property. Something's clogged and they need to tear the pipe up to get a look. Long story short, apparently the builder had some handshake deal with the previous owner about that sewer line and gave up a few blocks to let them run it through the property. No easement on the deed, nothing in writing. I sent the backhoe guy off. Next, the HOA president comes and knocks on my door and tells me the sewer is causing backups in several of the houses and no one can use their toilets, shower, run sinks, etc. until it's all fixed, and rerunning the sewer down their road instead of across my property is going to cost millions of dollars that they don't have and take months. I said something like, "Man, that sucks for you. I hope you get it fixed soon." The sign says no trespassing though, so if you could keep off the property, I'd appreciate it. Have a nice day. I got a letter from their lawyer with a lot of threats a bit later, but didn't see much to back them up legally. I figure they can take me to court if they want. They've had some giant, loud mobile poop tank stuck in someone's backyard for the past 3 months, and I see no signs of a new pipe. A few of the HOA residents stopped by and said that the houses were basically unlivable with the pump. They could only take a shower that was 5 minutes long, they could only flush number 2, and they can't sleep from the noise. It costs a lot of money, and someone lost a house sale, etc., etc. And also that they didn't have any part in the HOA stupidity other than living in it. I told them that I feel for them, but that HOA has been a pain in my rear since week 1, and I'm not inclined to let them go driving construction equipment across and digging holes in a yard that I worked hard on after the way that they've been treating me. They told me that I was a jerk. So am I the jerk? This is one of those situations where the people receiving the punishment or the consequences of a situation aren't necessarily the people that did the wronging in the first place. The HOA was. They were on this guy pretty much since he first moved in, but the fact that they would be like that and not realize that they also needed something from him at the same time is pretty baffling. Maybe it really was just the single HOA president that had the handshake deal and nobody else at the HOA knew about this agreement, so they thought they could just run wild with complaints and causing the original poster here a bunch of trouble. Eventually, this whole mobile poop pump thing that they have is a temporary solution with no long-term solution even in the works is probably going to violate some sort of rule from the county, either being too loud, not being where it's supposed to be, and maybe the OP will end up reporting them for that. But again, I feel bad for the people living there that are not on the HOA. They just live there and they're kind of the collateral damage of this entire situation. So if you were the original poster here, how would you handle this situation? Would you allow them to dig up your yard to fix their sewer line, or would you handle it how the OP did here? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for refusing to bend the rules on seeing my newborn just for one person, my sister-in-law, even if it's the only chance she's had to see him for months? I'm a 34-year-old female and I gave birth on Christmas Day. Before my son's birth, and to lessen visits, me and my 28-year-old husband, made a list in October and sent it out to everyone. Some rules include up to date on all vaccines. If you feel any way sick, don't visit. Let us know a week beforehand so we can arrange a day and time. No smokers, no phone calls or visits between 7:30 and 10 p.m. You can only stay an hour. No picking up the baby without consent. No advice, no perfume or deodorant. No is no, and we will not explain why. No pictures to be taken or posted on social media. If you visit the first time, you will be expected to give the mom, me, a gift card and the baby a gift from our approved list. Before you ever come, no matter how many times, you will be given a list of either food or groceries to bring with you and chores to be chosen off a list of your choosing. No more than 2 visits per week per person. It's helped to keep the visits to a minimum, and no one can complain about favoritism because everyone is treated equally. Which brings me to my current situation with my sister-in-law, who's a 20-year-old female. She studies in a different part of the country and is rarely home, and asked to visit last week before she had to go back to school. So we set up a date and linked to our gift list, and then we sent her the takeout that we'd like, including some chores that she can choose from. She texted back immediately saying that she's broken and she can do the extra chores instead. Me and my husband talked about it and came to the decision that if we bent the rules for one person, everyone would want the same treatment. We told her no, that we were very clear about our rules and maybe next time she could visit. She begged and said that she would even clean the whole house because it would be June before she would be home again, and we simply texted no. She didn't reply. She left this morning and we got multiple texts from my in-laws belittling us for using our child as a cash grab. My husband simply replied it was our rules and no one deserved special treatment, then told his family that they were on a timeout and we blocked them. Since then, my family and our friends have told us that we were wrong because she is a broke college student, and they would have understood if we looked the other way once. We tried reaching out to his sister, but she won't reply. So am I the jerk for refusing to bend the rules on seeing my newborn for just one person, even though it was the only chance she had to see him for months? This is extreme. They're basically holding the baby hostage and nobody can see the baby unless they comply with all of their demands. They might as well write out all the requirements on a ransom letter so that they can feel like it's a themed experience when they're picking out which chores they want to do. It's one thing if you've had a baby and you say, hey, when you're over, can you help me out with this thing because it's been really difficult for me, versus give me money, give me chores, give me money and chores. And I feel bad for the 20-year-old sister-in-law because she probably doesn't have money. She's not lying about that. She even offered to clean the entire house as a way to balance it out to make the OP here, the original poster, happy. Maybe the OP and the husband here were really counting on cash coming in order to execute whatever plans they had, which is something that you kind of hear from time to time about weddings, where people are really counting on a bunch of cash from their wedding in order to finance whatever it is they're trying to do, like a down payment on a house or just pay for the honeymoon. You just don't really see that happen as often with restricting who can see your baby. So if you were the sister-in-law in this situation, the one that got denied from seeing the baby, how would you have handled the situation? And let me know down below, jerk or not a jerk, and why. My entitled neighbor stole my cat, tried to bleach my cat so that we wouldn't know that it was still our cat, but surprisingly enough, the cat is the one who got revenge on the entitled neighbor. Our cat gave the entitled neighbor permanent nerve damage and led a trail straight into her house so that police would find everything they needed to press charges. Here's how it happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. My older sister had this awful, terrible neighbor who had a serious fixation for my sister's Seal Point Siamese cat. I'll call this neighbor CN for crazy neighbor, and I call my sister Sis. CN, crazy neighbor, was a black-haired, plump, 40-something divorcee who annoyed everyone in the neighborhood. She had zero understanding of boundaries and liked to come over to people's homes, barge in, look, snoop around, opening drawers and cabinets and touching their stuff. Once she even went into someone's fridge and grabbed herself a ginger ale. Then she got mad when the homeowner took it back. If you left your door unlocked, either the front door or the back door, for more than 10 minutes, chances were that she'd just come right in. She stole yard decorations from other people's yards and had been caught on more than one occasion pocketing something that she'd snagged off a mantle or a table of a house that she'd invaded. And she would always throw a tantrum when she got busted. Cops had been called on her many times, but she was good at being pathetic, so most people didn't press charges. Unfortunately, this only made her bolder. Basically, she was the entitled lady of the neighborhood. My sis was, unfortunately, one of her favorite victims. She'd come over without calling, barge her way in, and demand to see Sis's cat, telling Sis how beautiful he was and how much she wanted a cat just like him. Sis, rather than being confrontational, would let her see the cat, who didn't like the woman, then make her leave. CN, crazy neighbor, never wanted to leave and had to basically be pushed out the door. Oh, and she despised me because I wouldn't let her in when I answered the door, nor would I tolerate any of her nonsense in any way if she got past my sister. CN was so obsessed with the cat and offered to buy him many times, but my sis loved that cat. He'd been the runt of the litter and rejected by his mom. My sister had taken him in, bottle fed him, mothered him, and saved his life. He wasn't a pet, he was her child. So sis, of course, always said no. This royally pissed off CN. One day the cat got out. He wasn't an outdoor cat, so sis and I immediately started looking for him. We were checking the bushes and behind the flower pots in her backyard when we heard a very distinctive yowl, one of pure rage, followed by a very human shriek of pain. This was coming from CN's house. Suddenly, the doggy door on CN's back door slams open and out runs my sister's cat, his tail and one rear paw covered in what smelled like hair bleach. I'm allergic to bleach and immediately recognized the smell as he passed me, dashing past us and into Sis's house. The next thing you know, CN's back door slams open and she comes out cursing up a blue streak. Ragged claw marks adorned her left cheek and one of her hands had a deep bite wound that had completely saturated one of the gloves, the kind one gets with any hair coloring kit. The glove she was wearing was punctured and the blood was running down her hand and arm. It turned out when the cat had gotten out, CN had grabbed him, took him aside, then tried to use hair bleach to bleach the brown out of his tail and paws in order to change his appearance so that she could keep the cat. Unfortunately for her, she didn't know anything about Siamese cats and just how violent they can be. They were originally temple guardians for a reason. The moment Cien put that bleach on the cat's tail, he went absolutely berserk, letting out that yowl of rage that we heard, clawing up Cien's face and sinking his fangs deep into her hand. She pushed herself between the bushes, the ones that look like tall green paintbrush heads Sis used to separate the property line, and she began yelling. No, not yelling, shrieking. She shrieked that Sis's cat had wandered into her kitchen while she was cooking, and when she tried to pick him up, he attacked her for no good reason. Clearly, this was total BS. Cien then proceeded to call Sis the N-word several times. She's half black. And then called me, quote, an effing half-breed wetback floozy. I'm half Hispanic. We have different dads. She screamed that my sis was stupid for keeping such a dangerous animal around, and that my sister would be paying all of her medical bills. Then she got right in my sister's face, pushed my sister hard in the chest with her uninjured hand, and said that she was going to call animal control and intended to have the cat put down. Cien opened her mouth to say, shriek some more, but my sis, after hearing that last statement and without one word or warning, hauled off and decked her right in the face. Cien landed on her butt in the grass, now clutching her left eye. Sis then loudly suggested that Cien go screw herself with a hot curling iron, and then ran inside to find her poor cat while I called the cops. The whole thing from start to end lasted only maybe 5 minutes. Sis found the cat hiding in the laundry room and quickly cleaned him off in the sink. Meanwhile, Cien is still on her butt in our backyard, howling like a banshee until the cops arrived. I told them what happened, and they later tried to talk to my sister after she tended to her cat, who gave them the same story I did, even admitting to hitting Cien, in self-defense of course. It didn't hurt her case that Cien had left a bloody handprint on my sister's shirt when she'd shoved her. Cien of course told them something entirely different. Her story was that she was about to bleach her hair when my sister's cat came in and attacked her. She also said that both Sis and I attacked her too. I apparently kicked her in the stomach after Sis punched her, but the cops found no evidence of bruising, and the scratches on her face kind of masked her swelling eye. I also think the cops turned a blind eye, pun intended, to it considering the circumstances, but since there was a clear blood trail leading into Cien's open back door, the cops felt that they had probable cause to go in. I think if Cien had been paying more attention, she'd have refused them entry. The blood trail led to a sink in the first floor bathroom, blood, cat fur, a bleach applicator, and the box it came in were all in the sink and on the floor. The cat's collar was in the garbage. Cien kept trying to play the victim, but the cops didn't buy it. She got arrested, and my sister pressed charges for theft and assault. Cien also got nabbed for possession of stolen goods. Cops found a bunch of DVD players and CD players still in their boxes, sitting on her coffee table and in the spare room next to her bathroom, and she had a bunch of prescription bottles with other people's names on her kitchen counter. It turns out she'd also been stealing neighbors' painkillers when she'd visited them, and since she was a renter, the property owner gave her the boot for breach of contract. She went to jail and had to pay the cat's vet bill. He was okay, but a bit traumatized and had a yellow patch on his butt, paw, and tail for several months. Cien's hand got infected from the cat bite, and it turned out it had also caused tendon and nerve damage as well. The moral of the story: stay out of people's houses and have the common sense not to mess with a cat named Lucifer. So, am I the jerk for how we handled the situation with the crazy neighbor? What exactly did the neighbor think was going to happen when she started applying bleach to a cat? Is there any cat in existence that would just sit there and let you put bleach all over their entire body? Even with that kit she has, at least some of that is going to get on the cat's skin and burn the poor cat. So I'm glad the cat did what it did to bite her, even if it ended up giving her nerve damage in her hand in order to get out of that situation, because that poor little cat didn't deserve getting bleach on him. And the most funny part about this entire situation is that since the cat bit the lady, the main reason they were able to catch her to get probable cause for entering her house was because there was a drip trail of blood from her house from where the cat came. So somehow this cat just solved all the problems in one fell swoop. And this lady is obviously not a nice person even besides the cat. She's going over screaming slurs at her neighbors, and after she presents this big lie about how the cat wandered into her house, they find the cat's collar in the trash can. I mean, she was literally caught red-handed, unless she was able to stop the bleeding by that point. Even in the very, very weird off chance that the cat just sat there and let you bleach him, him, did she think that she would be brainwashing the cat because the cat looked different? Like it would go up to the mirror and go, oh, that's not me. I'm a different cat. I guess I live here now. How would bleaching the cat prevent it from going over to the neighbor's house, aka his home? The spoiler is, it wouldn't. The cat would go back home like normal and they would just find out that the cat was bleached. His personality and his relationship with humans is not going to suddenly change. So anyway, if somebody captured your cat or your dog and tried to steal them by bleaching them, and then you found out, how would you handle that situation? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for laughing hysterically after a date that kept insisting that women have periods from their butts? I'm a 20-year-old female and there was a 22-year-old guy that I've gone on a few dates with in the past couple of months. He's nice, and so far we've only progressed to going on public dates, but about a week ago we finally decided to have a nice date at my place. Since it was going to be at my place, I let him know before that I was at that time of the month because I wasn't sure what expectations he had or where his boundaries were yet, and we agreed to just have a nice takeout dinner and watch a movie. He comes over and we eat, and then we sit down on the couch to pick out a movie. When he says that it sucked that it was that time of the month, then he said how he thought it was so strange that women give birth through their V, but their periods come from their butts. This was a completely unprompted statement from him, and I'm still not sure how we even got on this topic, to be honest. I asked him what he meant by that, and he said again exactly what he had said before. I kind of smiled, assuming he was just joking, and said, oh yeah, so weird, thinking that he was going to start laughing soon to end the joke. He didn't, and instead started to talk about his first and only girlfriend he had in high school and how she used to complain about bad period poops all the time. At this point, I asked him if he's being serious, and he looked a little confused and said that he is. I asked him to explain how he came to that conclusion, and he explained that his first experience being around them was his high school girlfriend, and before then, he had never received or seen much information. He understood it was something that happened inside the body and that blood came out somewhere, but assumed that it came out of the V until he heard her complaining and realized it actually came out of the butt. It was very unexpected coming from a 22-year-old man. I somehow managed to keep my composure when I told him that periods do in fact come out of the V and not butts. He looked confused and then a little frustrated and started insisting to me that I was wrong, and then kept saying, are you sure? Are you sure? As if I was confused about where it came from out of my own body. I explained to him the anatomy a bit and how it worked, but he was very adamant. Eventually he conceded that that was where most women must have it, but some, like his ex-girlfriend, have it from their butt. He just could not understand, no matter how many times I tried to explain it to him, that he had just simply come to the wrong conclusion and misinterpreted his ex-girlfriend's words. The whole situation became so much that I started to laugh. I was doubled over, clutching my stomach, crying, laughing over this whole debacle, and he sat there red-faced, continuing to try to argue with me. Eventually, he said that he was ready to leave, and did before we could watch a movie. I felt bad for laughing after he left because I could tell that that was why he decided to leave. And he also texted me later that night to say that he had done a little bit of research on his own and that he was no longer interested in pursuing any sort of relationship because he couldn't stand to be with someone who laughed at him for not understanding. So, am I the jerk? A lot of the responses to this story are about the fact that the guy here was mansplaining to the original poster. The part that's hard to grasp is why he believed it so firmly. He must have come to that conclusion and then just had other things that he thought were reinforcing that belief to the point where this conversation shattered his reality about his perspective on this whole thing. But there obviously must have been some sort of lingering doubt or something that didn't totally make sense to him in the very beginning, because he brought this up, according to the OP, totally unprompted. I mean, she did tell him before she got there what the situation was, but this was after they finished eating while they were picking out a movie. He just says that out of nowhere. And obviously she took it as a joke because it sounded so ridiculous, but he kept pushing the issue by repeating it again. The guy obviously felt embarrassed because of his whole text message at the end about not wanting to pursue being with someone who would laugh at him for not understanding something. But at the same time, it's also very weird when somebody is so confident about something that they know nothing about. And that, in general, happens all the time. So if you were the girl in this situation, how would you have handled this last text message? What would you have said in response? And let me know, jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for demanding my husband to replace all of the books that he threw away? I'm a 31-year-old female. I'm an avid reader, and I used to read a lot in my teenage years as an escape method from my many problems, and recently got back into reading. I read classic books since this category is my favorite, and I spent time and effort visiting libraries and online shops to collect books. The thing is, my husband, who's 33 years old, 6-year-old hates it when I read. We've just returned from our honeymoon 2 months ago, and he's been complaining about books taking away our special time away, specifically at night, but I like to think that I'm balancing with my reading time. He has started calling me grandma or saying that I remind him of an old lady neighbor to get me to quit reading, but it didn't budge me. A week ago, I found out that he's given my book collection away, and I was devastated. After he defended himself saying that he did this for my own good, for the sake of our marriage, since I seem to have forgotten my priorities, I flipped out. I yelled at him that those books were hard to get and demanded that he pay me and replace them right then and there, but he said that I should invest my time in an outdoor hobby that we could both do, but I was having none of it and demanded that he replace the books, and I gave him a list of every name for every book, and when he saw it, he laughed and asked if I was really still thinking about those books and suggested that I move on. But I yelled at him, telling him that he has 1 week to replace them, and that was it. He's trying to get me to let it go, and had others say it was childish of me to start fighting over some books while the library is open, but they got no comment from me. Before you decide if I'm a jerk or not, here's a little more information. Yes, my husband knew about my love for reading, but like I said, it's been a long time since I've read a book. I've read stuff online here and there, and so this is recent. I confess that my husband did express that he felt neglected and ignored by me when I'm reading, but I didn't think that his concerns were legitimate. And as for the question of what do I plan on doing if he keeps stalling and doesn't replace the books in a week, I've already told him what I do, and now I've given him extra days, which pissed him off more. So am I the jerk for expecting my husband to replace all of the books? The husband confessing that he felt neglected and ignored by her is legitimate, even if she doesn't think it is, but the way that he went about handling it is not okay. He handled it like a baby who didn't get what he wanted, and because he couldn't fulfill his own neediness, decided to destroy the thing that was important to her. And then all of these other people that are trying to downplay and say, it's just books, there's a library open, those people don't understand the point of this, and I would assume he's probably recruiting them into this argument that they're having in order to make it seem like she's in the wrong when she's not. So if this was you and these books were your passion, you loved reading, and your significant other destroyed them or got rid of them, and you gave them the same type of ultimatum, hey, you got to replace these in a week or else, what would you do if it came to the or else? They didn't end up replacing all these books. Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Am I the jerk for being furious with my husband for getting the Sublime Sun tattooed on his arm? We've been married for 2 years, no kids together. I'm 23 years old and he's 25. My husband has both of his legs fully tattooed, and he's always said that he'll never tattoo his arms. He got sloshed last weekend and his friend tattooed the Sublime Sun logo on his upper bicep. It's a quality tattoo and his friend is a good tattoo artist. It was his favorite band in junior high school and he thought it was hilarious in an ironic way. When I woke up the next day and I saw it on him sleeping next to me, I exploded. It's a freaking Sublime tattoo. Like, I can't take him seriously anymore, and honestly, this makes me question his judgment in general, that he would take his leg tattoos so seriously and has always said he'd never touch his arms. I told him this. He said that I'm overreacting and I'm being a jerk for making him feel bad about it. I think he's just regretting it and won't admit it. So am I the jerk for being furious at my husband for getting the Sublime tattoo? I'm guessing she doesn't like him having tattoos in general, which is kind of strange because he has both legs fully tattooed. Or maybe it's the reverse. She is okay with tattoos, but only the legs, or the style that the legs are in for some reason. But I think what's most likely is that she just doesn't want to see them. But clearly she knew already that he did like tattoos because he has 2 full legs covered in them. And ultimately it's his body. He can tattoo it with whatever he wants. Somebody asked the original poster, why are you exploding on him since this isn't on you and it's not relating to you in any way? And the OP says, because the tattoo is so ugly. As his wife, I have to look at that thing. I know he will regret this. So let me know how you would handle a situation where your significant other gets a tattoo that you are repulsed by for any reason, and let me know jerk or not a jerk and why.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.